So good evening, everyone here in the town center and everyone watching at home, either right now or watching later on NNC TV. Welcome to the second of three special meetings of the Richmond Select Board on the topic of the fiscal year 2025 budget. Again, that's the budget for fiscal year 25 that will go into effect on July 1. So, and that will be voted on at town meeting in March. Before we jump into the agenda, is there any public comments anybody would like to make on any topic that's not on the agenda? Pardon?
Jay, I think you should just remind people of your planned event.
Which planned event was that?
Come and gone.
Yes. I mean, did people come like?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's a very good point. Having heard from a number of citizens that we don't do an adequate job explaining the budget before we finalize it, and saying they couldn't come on these evening meetings, completely on my own, I decided to offer people a chance to quiz us about the budget at the town center on Saturday. And Josh was good enough to come join me. We had copies of the draft budget. One person came, Marshall Paulson. So Marshall, thank you wherever you are. But to his credit, he asked a lot of very good questions that I'm sure other people in town would have asked had they been there.
I don't expect anything less from Marshall.
That's true. So, and there's Lisa now. But I've also said, if anybody watching this later says, I would really like Jay Fur to come sit in my living room and explain the budget to me, all they have to do is reach out, because I'd really rather have people know what's in the budget in time to actually say something about it, instead of waiting till town meeting and go, oh, I didn't know that was in there.
Will you bring baked goods with you?
I might. I meant to make them for Saturday, but Saturday morning I was making hundreds of meatballs for a memorial service. So, okay. Any other public comment? Okay. Are there any additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda? Okay, I would like to make note of one semi-unusual item on the agenda that was added. The North Star Fireworks Company is having a hard time staffing their crews, to put it bluntly, and they've made it known that they're going to have to cut back the number of towns they can serve next year for the July 4th. And so they've said it's basically first come, first serve. When they have enough contracts that they have no more, that they can't do anymore, the remaining towns are out of luck. So we have discussed an amount with them, and they've agreed to it, and we need to get the contract signed once we've approved it, and to them ASAP. So that is on the end of the agenda. Okay. So yes, sir.
Jay, just a question, because I know there was some brief discussion of fireworks funding before. So this 4th of July that we're discussing will take place in the 25 budget year.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is actually,
but it's budgeted in 24. Yes, no?
Yeah, it's odd. I don't think that I think that's we sort of pay in advance. So I think we pay for a service that we're going to receive 4 days into the next year in the current fiscal year.
That was my understanding. I just wanted to confirm it.
Yeah.
It's like prepaying for your Bermuda vacation before you actually take it to get the good price. Should Bermuda be in your plans? Okay. So our agenda for tonight is, again, we're going to continue to review the draft fiscal year 25 budget. And we have already covered some departments, but we're going to continue tonight. But first, our first bullet point has to do with just a review of unassigned and restricted funds.
Connie has your hand up.
Connie, go right ahead.
That's the last one or not?
Hi, the fireworks, it is considered a prepaid expense. So the expense will get paid in fiscal year 24, but will end up being expensed in fiscal year 25. So it'll go in as prepaid now when we pay for it, but it'll show up as an expense in fiscal year 25. So it is part of the fiscal year 25 budget.
Okay. Thanks, Connie. Bard looks bemused.
Well, I'm actually concerned because we don't have a 25 budget.
We don't, but we gotta pay now or no fireworks.
So it would only appear to me that we don't have authority over 25 budget. It's possible some of us might not be here to approve an expense in 25. So my only observation is does seem more like it's prepaid in this year's budget.
So can we pay for it out of this year's unassigned funds and have it be part of this year's budget?
The timing is just awkward.
I agree.
Yeah,
Now that you pointed out.
I mean, I guess if it doesn't get approved for FY 25 in the budget, then we're
Can you see any downside?
overspending in 25 at that
Right,
point.
we're talking about $13,500.
But I think the question of whether it will be voted in or out is not really germane to the question of, do we have the authority to spend 25 money before the 20?
No, I'm saying the alternative would be that we just overspend 24.
Well, we'd overspend 25, I think. You're saying overspend this year?
I would say-
Double bill it for this year?
We'd overspend 24 paying for 25, something in the
Right.
25.
We would pay it out of the budget that we overspend things with, things come up and we pay for them out of unassigned money.
How
I
did we
don't-
do it last year? We had the same problem last year, as I recall.
Yeah, well, last year was a bit funky too, where we had some money in the budget, we had some money from the bank
Account,
account
so-
that was coming in. So I think it was like a $6,000. Actually, I don't even know if we had anything in the budget, did we?
Well, yeah, the,
Last year.
the committee closed out its money and then we supplemented it with the remaining amount due. Yeah. Okay, Connie, you still have your hand up? Go ahead.
It has to be prepaid and it has to hit in 25 because we do not receive the product until fiscal year 25. We made that adjustment with the auditors this year. It's no different than the premiums for health insurance that we pay for employees in June that are for July. It goes on the books in the year you receive product.
And Bart, I'm gonna.
It would be the same if we put money down on an excavator in one fiscal year and it was to take possession for the next fiscal year.
Bart?
So my thought would be if it doesn't pass and the select board says, yeah, do you get your back? Can you get a refund on it if you don't end up doing it?
Doubtful.
I'm not concerned about it passing or not passing. I'm concerned about the protocol
Mhm.
of approving money now that it's not part of an existing budget. I don't think it's plausible for us to approve an expenditure in a budget that does not yet exist.
Okay, and so I'm asking, could we instead pay for it out of the unassigned money that's in this year's budget? Connie, could we pay for it? Because I think
You
Bart has a
would
very.
have to, but keep in mind, this year's budget has already paid for fireworks.
Right, so we would essentially overspend this year's budget.
And then going forward each year, we would just follow that cycle. And so there'd be 1 year where it would hit twice, but thereafter it would hit once. I think legally that's more defensible,
But
but I'm not.
As long as the auditors are okay with that from the accounting perspective of you didn't receive it till 25, so it's not an expense until 25.
But her analogies,
that
I think,
doesn't change. Yeah, if we pay for it now and don't receive it to 25, it has to hit 25. And we also have the issue of, will we have unassigned to pay for it, unassigned funds available to pay for it, which will come later in the budget tonight.
Okay, I propose, since we have gotten this far down this path, that we move agenda item B to this point of the meeting and just get it over with.
Okay.
Any objection? Okay. So Bard's point is that we may not be on this, well, you will be because your term keeps going, but my term could end. I may not be reelected. Jeff's term is scheduled to end at the same time. He may or may not run or be reelected.
Me too.
And we're paying for it out of a budget that does not currently exist. So I think we've overspent things in the past when emergencies have come up. And I don't call this an emergency, but when unexpected expenses have come up, we have overspent line items in the budget. And that budget we do have control over. I question the idea that we actually cannot. I mean, kind of use the explanation of paying for an excavator in 24 and not getting it till 25. Why do we have to why did we, and that excavator be coming out of 24 money? Why are the fireworks different? Why do the fireworks have to come out of the 25 budget?
Anything that we would pay for in one fiscal year for another fiscal year is going to be considered prepaid. So it'll show up as a prepaid expense in one year, but it doesn't come off of our expenditures. That's true of anything. That's why the auditors, for 3 months following the end of the fiscal year, scrutinize every single invoice to determine when was the service received, when was the product received. That is when it counts.
I find I'm getting into deep water here.
Hmm.
Jeff, Lisa, David, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm struck by the guidance we received a few years ago when our legal counsel told us that we could not put the conservation fund out 5 years. We can only go for the current fiscal year. That's why it's on every year.
Mhm.
And I'm struggling with comparing this to that. This is the next fiscal year, not going out 5 years. But to Bard's point, I think we're stepping pretty far out on the ledge.
So if we didn't do this, would we ever be able to do it?
That's
Because
right.
we're always gonna have this circumstance, is that right? Right, because it appears, I mean, at least for the last, the last 2 years that I'm aware of, that they ask for money up front.
They do. They want money up front. It's cash in the
Can't do it
barrel.
this year, then we couldn't do it any year, is that correct?
Possibly.
Unless there was, I mean, the only thing I could think on my feet of is if there was a reserve fund. And we put money into the reserve fund with the idea that we're sort of paying ahead and be transparent with the voters about that.
How do you think about that, Connie?
But that would be for next year.
The only downfall I could see would be if it didn't get voted in. But yeah, the reserve makes sense.
Well,
You build your reserve and you use it when you need to use it.
Right, so I mean, for instance, for FY25 budget, we could have a line item in for $13,000 for fireworks for that year because this is the transition year, and then have a line item in for $13,000 or $14,000 for firework reserve. And then in the 26 budget, you just have the firework reserve and you spend out of that this time
And
of
then you
year,
put more
every
money.
year for the next year.
Okay.
So like, in order, I mean, it might not be, in order to still have fireworks in 24, we can sort of bend the rules right now, vote for it, approve it. The auditors will move it to 25, but then as we get into the budget, we would add in that reserve fund to say, well, here's our fix. If that passes muster.
Would you use a soccer reserve fund?
Or the tennis fund.
The tennis. fund.
Jerry?
Oh, the soccer.
Jerry.
Jerry Levesque,
Mhm.
back a few years ago, if we pre-ordered the fireworks, they would give us a discount.
Yeah.
I don't know if that still
Yeah, that's
exists.
Effectively, that's,
Yeah, they're giving us 10% more fireworks if we pay in advance.
but if
So,
we don't pay in advance, we have no fireworks.
Yeah, right, yeah. So,
I think it's really about the authority and the source of funds.
Yeah.
And my concern is we don't have a budget for 25. And it's not a capital expense. It's a service, so, or a loan. That's how we sometimes do other things. So this is sort of an unusual fish here.
Mhm.
Right,
We're
so
kind of-
I would say this year you pay with unassigned funds. And remember, we got to reduce our unassigned funds we're going to use for next year by that much. And we budget for money to go to a reserve.
so you're saying that would be an unassigned fund expense in FY25.
In FY24. Because we
24.
got to,
But
Yeah.
but Connie, I thought that if
no,
no matter,
I think the same rule applies. It's,
the auditors would still say, nope, that's a prepaid expense for 25. Whether it's coming out of unassigned or a budget line.
yeah. This is our first time facing this because it
Right,
just
the
changed last year.
Right, we need to explain to the auditors, we are, as somebody said, in a transition. Fireworks committee used to do this every year, and then they just reached the point where they just couldn't. And last year was a one-time thing where the majority of the money spent on fireworks did come out of the fireworks committee's bank account, and we made up the rest. And now we need a framework for going forward. And so last year is sui generis. It's not a circumstance that will be repeated. It pays to increase your work power.
So
Jeff?
If
if we received any revenues related to 4th of July from coin drops, vendors,
Mhm.
whatever, would it offset? Yes. You know, but is that a possibility?
Last year we used, basically the money that we raised from those sources went to pay for everything other than the fireworks. And we did have enough to cover it, but we didn't wind up with fireworks worth left over. We might have, I think we may, Connie could probably tell us exactly how much money was left after we paid all the bills. I think it was
Not
in the
off the
order,
top of my head.
I think it was in the order of like $500 was left over after we paid for things.
But we could, there's the possibility of raising more revenues. You know, if you were to charge vendors more, for example, you might raise more revenues and.
I don't know if we'd raised 13,500 though.
But to your point, I think, Jeff, is so if you create a fund, there's money in, money out, and you sort of build it up over time, and it perhaps matters less if it's called out to the voters as a 4th of July reserve, 4th of July / fireworks reserve.
Yeah.
And it has every year a budget cycle, some goes in, some goes out, and then it would seem to me to be transparent to the voters and within our authority to spend out of our current fund.
And we might not hit it this year, but we, you know, we will hit it from the year going forward. And it particularly if we put the money in for 25 into the reserve fund, so then that would work. I was hoping to reduce the number of reserve funds rather than increase them, but you sure we can't put the soccer money into that? Recreation. It is recreation.
Well, but the soccer money is actively used.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, so that's an anomaly where I don't know what the exact history is, but soccer is its sort of its own organization, but rather than have their own bank account managed by their board, it runs through the towns whenever they need to buy new soccer balls. They submit the invoice and they pay it out of that fund. I think there was something maybe years ago that they needed a little bit better control, so that's where they went to. We should probably look at, could we?
Good
get
job
in
for the
that?
recreation committee.
Right, it would be good, yeah, but they do use it for their fall soccer program, and I think they have a spring program too.
Okay, so for what it's worth, we do need to have, I'll get to Pete. Pete's got his hand up. Pete, go ahead.
Here, can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. I don't know the terms with North Star Fireworks, but would it be possible to sign a purchase order for this amount of money and at the bottom of it, pending town meeting approval in March? So basically, it's like we're waiting for the, add that money to that current fiscal year 24, the other 13.5, and put it in front of the voters. And that way there, you haven't committed yourself. So you're basically buying yourself. You're putting your money, you're putting your reserve, your request in, pending the town voters' approval. I think it helps everybody that way.
I don't think that, I think that they're anticipating so much demand that they would say,
Next.
exactly, they're gonna go with who pays them at least their 50% deposit and signs the contract. Pending doesn't really work for them because they have a lot of demand. I mean, good thought, Pete, but I just think with this vendor, it doesn't really work.
It just seems to be the safest way for the town to do something like this when we don't have this set aside, it's being most transparent, but.
Yeah, I just think we'd lose it. I mean, when I talked to her, I was like, can we wait till the 20th for our next meeting? And she's like, I'm like, okay, we'll do it next week.
Yeah, I didn't know how timely this was, so of course.
So I have a suggestion. I think we could use it. We could approve this expense from FY 24 unobligated funds. And then clean this up. I think this was your suggestion, Jay, and then clean it up in the 25 budget by putting reserve funds in, and then the money's going to go in and out. I'm struck also, Connie, for, if this is feasible, if revenues come in for whatever purpose, that it's an account by which monies go in and out and it's identifiable. That was kind of your point, I think, Jeff.
Yeah. I like the idea of paying attention to it.
Okay. So somebody needs to put together a motion.
I move to approve.
Let's do the PO, sorry. Let's do the PO first. Let me share my screen here quick. We
Okay.
do that, then we can do, actually,
It's a purchase order, right?
I have the whole motion there for you, so.
Yeah, you do.
I'll just bring the purchase order up so you guys can see it, but I drew a motion up that has purchase order and warrant all together and contract.
Okay,
So I move to approve the purchase order 4830 for $13,000 to North Star for the 4th of July fireworks, and to approve the warrant to pay for the fireworks.
No, the budget was
Unassigned, should I be including that
No, it's
language?
13,000. That's what I told-
From unassigned funds? Should I be including that in the?
Why not? Yeah.
okay, I apologize. I was muttering at Jeff. I mean, at Josh. So let's make sure we have the record accurately the verbiage,
Want me to do that again?
if you wouldn't mind.
I move to approve purchase order 4830 for $13,000 to North Star for the 4th of July fireworks, and to approve the warrant to pay for the fireworks out of unassigned funds in fiscal year 24.
This is David, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Jeff Forward and seconded by David Sander to approve purchase order 4830 for North Star Fireworks in an amount of $13,000 to be paid for out of unassigned funds in the fiscal year 24 budget. Any further discussion? Lisa, you've been quiet. Do you have any input?
You know how I feel about fireworks, it is.
Oh, right, you don't like. I wish that they really would have truly silent fireworks, but as I mentioned before, basically that's all the
Well,
things that
I've looked into it, but I don't think you want to hear it. So, go ahead.
okay. Are people, John?
My only other comment, this is Bardley, says, it's one of the things that made me ponder this as it came up,
Yeah, when-
that less than 100% of select board and citizens support this, as hard to believe as that may be for those people who are avid supporters.
Mhm.
So I would-
What's the summary of that?
I would echo that there is a constituency in town that feels pretty strongly that fireworks are quite upsetting, particularly to domestic pets, dogs in particular. And that would rather that we didn't have fireworks at all.
Right.
There's a constituency for that.
Right, and for what it's worth, this year we're pretty far down the path of no return, but there is such a thing as an LED light show where they use this is not me making something up, they use mini drones and the lights fly around, and if you've ever watched a video of them, they're pretty incredible. Have I priced them? No. It might
I have.
How much are they, Lisa?
Well, it depends. You can start with 250 drones, or you can go all the way up to, hundreds or thousands, which has got to be beyond belief. But the one I priced, the cheapest price I could find for that was around $43,000. That's 250 drones, and that's for about half an hour. And it comes with all the operators and, everything. It's a package deal. Yeah, I'll keep looking, but I haven't found a better price. I guess I worry a little bit that I don't know if everybody in Richmond has seen a drone show. I agree with whoever it was said they're pretty amazing. They are. And being that they're totally silent, you'd swear you hear whoosh sounds, but they don't make any sound at all. And they're quite they're quite customized also. You can customize them to spell words if you want, or to produce shapes, or something that looks like the town center up in the sky, or, all kinds of things, but that's what they are.
And just to share my opinion, I think fireworks are neat, but I never got to go to them when I was a kid. It's not something that I would lose sleep over missing. My wife doesn't like them at all because guess what? Who knew? They're noisy. But I know that there are a lot of people who feel very passionately that it's not July 4th without. So
I would suggest, it's likely that drones will come down in cost over time. I would think it might be likely that these kind of shows might become more common. Over time. And that this is not the time to do the research on it, or to approve it one way or another tonight. But I would recommend that somebody I don't know who, somebody who's interested in this. Should do the research on it for next year and before budget season, do a presentation or an explanation to the select board of what it might be and what it might cost.
I think Lisa's
That makes
volunteering.
sense?
Yeah, I'll volunteer. What I know so far is that they're ordering right now for next 4th of July, of course, like the fireworks people are. I think you're right, Jeff. As these become more well-known and probably more popular, I think prices will come down, the number of suppliers will increase, competition will increase, and maybe the variety will increase. So that is something to head for. I don't get a sense we're going to head in any direction unless the board wants to. So you know how I feel about it, but I'm just one person. So if we want to take that kind of a direction, I think we should express that.
So this is Bart. I have a suggestion. I mean, we've broken this into sort of the current year budget for July 4th, 2024, slightly into fiscal year 25. I recommend that we vote on this and that as we build a specific budget item into the budget for next year's budget and subsequent years with dollars in and out, perhaps we sort of asterisk this for a conversation at town meeting about preference from the voters.
Right.
How would they like to proceed?
I think that's a good idea.
That is a good
Traditional
idea.
fireworks, explore alternatives, or something else?
Mhm.
Trained
Actually, it
pigeons.
would be a good thing to bring up at town meeting,
Mhm.
Maybe under other business or something, or, I don't know, we don't know if we need a specific article on it, but it'd be interesting to hear.
I would be, I find that would be, I think that'd be worthwhile. Okay, well, we do have a motion on the floor made by Jeff and seconded by David to,
Has your hand up.
oh, I'm
Just one last, I wanted to comment on something Bart said. I guess what I wanted to say is if the town wanted to put on like a demonstration, kind of a short version or something as a public information effort before town meeting or something like that, that might well be possible. I haven't asked anyone that because it just occurred to me, but I can look into that to see if somebody can bring 100 drones down and fly them around for 5 minutes and we tell everybody to come look at them or, whatever, to get an idea of how much or how little they would be impressed with it. It might be one way to answer the question. Otherwise, we're trying to embrace something that we don't really know what it is.
Good point.
I'll do that. I'll go ahead and do that.
okay.
At the
Well, let's-
equinox, do it at the equinox, Lisa.
Okay, Ides of March, yeah, okay.
Okay, let's go ahead and take a vote. Please state your name on your vote on the motion to approve the $13,000 purchase order. What was it again? 40.
It's pulled it down.
$13,000 to North Star,
4830.
4830. Okay,
Okay, Jeff, this is Jeff,
David,
Art and I.
J.I. Oh, and Lisa, I'm so sorry.
Lisa, nay?
Well, thank you for the educated discussion. For what it's worth, Carol and I are going up to Montreal for New Year's Eve. And
Ooh,
Montreal annually goes like full tilt boogie.
crazy, yes.
Yeah, they go absolutely crazy. And so maybe I'll be able to shoot some video. I would be surprised if somebody isn't out there with an LED drone show. So if there is one,
They do, they actually have a festival of lights.
oh, I know. I've never known them to do the drones before, but by this point in human history, they probably do. So if they do, I'll shoot some footage. Yes, sir.
Can we do the drones and the fireworks in the same place at the same
I
time?
think we should, yeah. Let them find it out.
Breaking barriers here.
I'll be underneath the barrel somewhere.
The drone companies are still gonna want you to prepay.
Right. We're still gonna have that problem.
Right, you're right.
Okay, well, people's
We
time
fix
is
that.
valuable. It is now 7:30. And so Connie and Josh and some of the department heads are here. And we need to talk about the FY25 budget. Our first bullet point under that is review of unassigned and restricted. Connie, I assume that's your item?
Or you want me to-
Actually, Josh has a good grip on it at this point.
Wrong person.
That's all right. All right, so update since last meeting. I'll start with, at the last meeting, as we talked about, we didn't have the preliminary numbers back from the audit yet. So Connie had run some numbers to give us an idea of where we were at with restricted funds and unassigned funds at the end of FY 23. Since that last meeting, we did receive the audit from the auditors. And turns out the calculations that we had were off by quite a bit for unassigned and restricted funds. What it really came down to is kind of spent some time trying to figure out what did we miss? And what we ended up missing was the way we were accounting for the way too big.
Just go to 200% zoom by clicking on the zoom button.
Can I do that?
Yeah, just.
Oh,
pick
I was
200.
clicking the wrong button, sorry. That's probably too much.
Okay, do 150.
A second.
If you go, yeah, just pick,
Is there
just custom there at the
I
bottom.
got you. Okay, so
There we go. Okay.
the way we were accounting for the use of the unassigned and restricted funds in the budget, we weren't really accounting for that with the calculations that we had done for the last meeting. So where that leaves us is with restricted funds. This is a little too big still for me. Let me get this down a little bit. Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm gonna do 125. All right, so at the end of FY 22, we had $940,000 in restricted funds. The close of FY 23, that came down to $708,000 and $708,000, and that sort of makes sense because in the budget we had budgeted to spend
500.
was about 500,000 in restricted in FY 23.
Yeah.
So it would make sense that number would come down a bit from the 940 because we did budget a lot. And then at the end of FY 23, our unassigned funds went from 848, slightly up to 922. Now, the reason why this one didn't go down more is because we actually got paid out from FEMA for the Halloween storm. So that helped us continue to have some more revenues. Not Thompson Road yet, not getting to that yet. That was Dugway, and I think some of the other stuff that we had come in.
We're still waiting on the Thompson Road.
I'm gonna get to that.
Okay.
Yep. And then on unassigned funds, because we had largely due to savings in the police budget, so that we also had about $450,000 budgeted to be spent out of unassigned funds in FY 23 as well. So that actually had a slight uptick because of the savings that we had in the police budget. So on unassigned funds, we don't have any budgeted uses in FY 24. We don't have any unbudgeted uses so far in FY 24. So at the end of FY 24, we should still have 922 in unassigned funds. However, with highway, we do have $500,000 budgeted to be used to offset taxes in FY 24 and $440,000 in expenses for the July flooding so far. So this is just contracted expenses. We do expect to get about $159,000 in from the FEMA claim. That's the Thompson Road culvert.
Okay.
We put that paperwork in January. We still haven't seen the money yet, so continue to follow up.
January of this year?
It's January of this year.
I thought we've been tracking that for years.
Well, no, so that project closed, I think, last summer. We got the paperwork in, so now and then it took a while for the local to put it through, and then they're like, oh, it's all good. But we haven't seen our check yet, but I expect that to be coming. So that's going to put us.
Excuse me, did you
Yes.
say that we're gonna get the 440 in January?
No, we're going to get the 150 now. So I put the 159 request in. I thought that was finalized by FEMA in January. We submitted all the paperwork.
Okay.
They're doing their final review. It's taken, obviously, we're at month 11 now. But hopefully we should get that here. I expect we'll get it in FY 24. We should be getting it from them. So that's going to leave us at the end of FY 24, if everything comes in on budget, at negative 72 in restricted funds. We are hoping that we're going to start to get some of this back in 24. From that's the July flooding. We have kind of gone through the spending phase, and now we're in the reporting phase to FEMA, I'll call it. So Pete and I actually today spent time going through gathering expenses for Volunteers Green, and from there we'll move on. So we have another meeting with FEMA later this week. I think as we close out projects, we'll start to get some of that money back. Regardless of how much we get back in FY 24, we'll get pretty much all of $440,000 back because it'll be paid out at 75% from FEMA plus another 17.5% from the state. So it's about 92% that we'll get back on the 440. And this number doesn't include wages, and Pete and his crew spent 3.5 months
Right.
basically doing nothing else.
Overtime, you know,
So
but
that's gonna
a lot.
go up quite a bit. So this, although this -72 initially, when we looked at this last week, I was a little shocked. It made sense with how much we use in FY 23, and as we look forward to 24 and what we're gonna get back from FEMA, I'm not that worked up about it. I think we'll be okay. So then we look as a percentage of the budget, and this is sort of looking at, kind of worst case scenario with that -72 standing pat there for the end of the budget. So 15%, which is the number we looked at as far as trying to keep on hand. Let me make that larger. I see parts training. Sorry, as I'm switching budgets here. All right, so 15, so our operating budget right now for the highway department in FY 25 is at about $1.9 million. 15% of that would be 288. Obviously, we're not going to be able to retain that going forward in FY 25. The general fund budget is at 2.8 million right now in the draft. 15% of that is 423. The projected unassigned funds at the end of FY 24 is 922. That actually might end up being a little higher. Connie ran some numbers. She estimates, I think we're about $100,000 in savings in police already 4 months in. So that might, we're going to continue to pay Heinsberg, so we may not realize that the whole way. And we're hopefully going to be hiring some officers. But that number, I think, will probably go up due to some savings. So that means we would have about $500,000 to still put into the budget to offset the FY 25 tax rate out of the unassigned number.
So would we use some of that to cover the deficit to get us back to
15.
Yeah, so if in fact
highway?
so Connie asked that question to the auditors, and if in fact FY 24 does end up in the red for highway, they actually will assign some of the unassigned funds to go to cover highway. But at this point, it's still a projection. We don't know exactly where we're going to end up there based on what we might get back from FEMA. And we don't know exactly where we're going to end up at the end of FY 24 in unassigned either, because we are under in some budget areas as well.
So to summarize, and I think this is where you started, we would have close to 500,000 available to offset tax revenue need in 25 and still have about 15% in our reserves.
In our unassigned, and we're going to and we would
Unassigned, yeah.
and we would dip down in restricted, but again, we would be below that for FY 25. But as we get that money back from FEMA, we're actually going to go above 15%.
So that's assuming that FEMA is going to be timely, and we just.
It's hard to say, I would hope.
2019 money back.
I'm sorry, Jeff, I didn't hear the beginning of that.
So that's assuming that FEMA is going to be timely, and we haven't gotten the 2019 FEMA money back yet. So if you go further down.
Yeah.
On this. So we're not that far off here. 15%, if you do both of those, 15% is 700,000 something. And we're 850,000, which is, if those two numbers are correct, we're at 18% rather than 15%.
Well, that's right. That's with the current balance of projection of -72 and 922 gets it to 850. So
Right,
that's before we would actually spend the 500 in FY 25.
So what I'm suggesting is that, this chart is a whole lot different than the PDF chart that we have with the graph that goes up and up like that.
Yeah, and I updated that too, just because that was a number that I think was
It's
a bit.
not 35%, it's 18% right now, if you were to take that last chart. So.
Right, if we put 24 in here.
So to me, this chart is not helpful. It's confusing, and it gets referred to a lot. Oh, we're not spending, millions of dollars, and we
Right.
have, and that does not appear to be the case.
The only thing I'll say is this chart is historical accurate numbers, actual numbers, and the number that we looked at over here is a projection. So I could put that onto the chart to say projected. And I think in the town meeting presentation, I usually talk about where our projection is that we would end up being at. But that's the only reason I didn't add into this is because that's just sort of where we finished in 23.
So for our purposes tonight, we're not approving a 35% or an 85% unassigned, or 55% unassigned fund balance, above what we're budgeting. This is the closest number we have to what the information we have tonight, and that's 18% is, the 850,000 is 18% as opposed to 15%, which is the 711, right?
But that's not taking into account that we're technically negative in the highway, which we expect.
Well,
It is.
We
actually.
expect to get back.
so this 850 would be if,
It's those two numbers above.
right, so that's where we would be sort of on June 30th of this year, of next year, right? Next fiscal year, we'd be at about 850, which is our projection of the negative 72 plus
Okay.
922. But then what we would do is if we're still gonna budget, because right now in the budget, we have 500,000 coming out of unassigned funds. So we would take 500,000 to offset the taxes still in FY 25, right? So you're right, combined, we should finish about 18% combined. But then if we pull that 500,000 out, but then hopefully we get FEMA money in to backfill that, so that when we get to the end of 25, we're sort of,
18%.
we'll be a little bit more, but we'll be back to like 15-ish per.
I don't think so, so,
We'll be over and restricted. We would be.
Yeah,
If we
yeah,
got
well-
the full 500,000 back from FEMA, we'd be
if
over.
we
and
got
restricted.
$400,000 back from FEMA, but
We don't know.
we don't know. I mean, I dealt with FEMA on, for two projects at the school district when I was there. It took years and years.
Yeah, it could take a
In
while.
fact, after they gave it to us, they tried to claw it back.
Mm-hmm.
And it took years of legal work trying to do that,
Mhm.
deal with that. So I think it's hard to count on that 422,000, is that what it was?
Yeah, 440.
Something like that. It's hard to count, or 440 from FEMA. That's money we don't have in the bank, that we might have in the bank.
Mhm.
That 850 is something I feel more confident in.
Let's do Connie and then Bard. Connie,
So I totally agree with what Jeff is saying. These are projections. We've never had FEMA money come in this quickly. So we're really going out on a limb, projecting when we're getting it in. But the other big thing is we're also projecting another FEMA event isn't going to happen. And
Good point.
that is a big projection. But when we look at the budget later, if we take away that 500,000 that we already have plugged for unassigned funds, we're looking at a 15% increase. So I agree with some projecting, but it really could blow up in our faces if we have another weather event.
okay, Bard.
Well, I'm just gonna observe, Connie, is it not also true? While people don't like borrowing money and paying for the privilege, for unexpected emergencies, we have the ability to borrow money and then repay it over time.
Absolutely.
So.
I mean, eventually we'll get the money back, eventually. We can't bank on how soon, and we can't bank on other events not happening.
Of course, those are, there are uncertainties. I think the real question though, and this speaks to the heart of our conversation about what do we want to hold on to, the 15% threshold or not. If we were really cautious, we'd go up to 30 or 50 or whatever percent, and then we'd be able to pay cash for everything. If we're really incautious, we'd go down to 0 and we'd have to borrow money for everything.
Right, those are the two extremes.
And I think that's why we landed on sort of the 15%, anticipating there's some unexpected stuff. And if there really were extremes, especially early in the year, before we accrued any vacancy savings, et cetera, we'd have to borrow money.
Mhm. We also need 15, not just for that, but also for cash flow. We have to.
Some money for cash flow, but I'm just observing that we said very recently that our target was going to be 15%. And that if we had more than that, we were going to use it to defray taxes. So that's kind of the conversation. But how we estimate what that 15% is, your point is the 440 is a wild card, I think.
Yeah, and so the difference in my mind between the 15% of the numbers that we have in front of us tonight, which is 711, right? That's 15% is 711, and 850,000 which is 18%, which is the two numbers that are added from the two sections above,
Mhm.
the highway and the general fund.
It's this.
92,922 minus 772 is 850. That's where that number comes from.
Correct.
The difference in that is 138,000. And so, what I would suggest is that we be thinking about that number more than the 499,000.
I agree.
That gets us back on our 15% is.
And then if we get the money, we get the money. If we don't get the money, we don't.
We don't, right, and then we allocate it in a future year where that,
That's the very conservative, play it safe approach.
So
Well,
my only point is that number available to use in fiscal year 25 of 499. I don't know if I like that number. What according to this chart, the number that's available is 138
so if we
to
do,
get us to 15%.
So if, instead of cut to the chase, instead of saying we have 500, if we say, call it 140 to use in fiscal year 25, that puts more pressure on us to reduce the budget to our avowed target,
Right, what I was gonna do,
15% increase.
So,
We're
yeah.
gonna cut expenses.
if we take that and we just say it's 140, right? So we take that offset. So now our tax rate is at an 11% increase. But we also used,
So we can work on
500.
that. So I'm happy to discuss that as we move forward, but just this chart, that's the number that I come up with is 140,000.
I'm
They
30.
get above our 15% target.
David, do you have any thoughts on this? Lisa?
I'm just trying to figure out how to explain it to someone who didn't go through all this. In less time than it took us. I guess, the fact that we have this FEMA money hanging out there, we've spent it. I mean, we spent money, we're going to get it back. It's not going to be anytime soon. That's a large part of the explanation as far as I can see.
Right, that's the great unknown. We know that
Right.
because efficiencies way overspent the highway restricted.
Mhm.
And there's nothing to do about that. People prefer to have roads,
Yeah, oddly enough, yeah. Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
so I think that's the mantra.
FEMA's budget's a matter for Congress.
Yeah.
I don't really, I don't mean to be flip about it, but FEMA's budget has been a political football in Washington. And it's really uncertain. They are going to overspend their budget. And they're gonna have to Congress is gonna have to figure out what to do. about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
So I don't think we can count on FEMA money and, but or at least not in the short term.
So this is Bart. So if we cut to the chase, at least for tonight, recognizing we continue to work on the budget, could we, for near-term purposes, assume it's 140,000 of 24 funding to offset 25 taxes? And then we're gonna have to keep working through the budget, see where that ends up in terms of a tax increase.
That makes sense to me.
And then see are we gonna reduce expenses or are we gonna, if we know more a month or two from now, do something different?
Mhm.
Okay. So we kind of reached the point of being ready to move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
so our next one is library budget.
Yep. Think so.
And I think Rebecca
library.
is here.
Rebecca?
Yep, I'm here.
Yay.
So for library, I'll just go over a couple quick things, Rebecca. Literally two things, but just to explain the highlights. So, and I should have put a header on the budget to indicate what the yellow was based on Dave Thomas's question to us via email. The yellow on the budget is items that have changed since the last review of the select board. So we added, and you'll see this in a couple of lines, bonus. And what we did was we separated that out because of the way the compensation study discusses pay is once you get to the end of the pay grid, you get your last step, then you don't go up another step, but there's discretion to give a bonus that could be up to what you would get if you went up a step. So we could put it back into salaries, but we figured just to be transparent about, well, these are the annual salaries. This is what we could budget for a bonus. And then we changed the Social Security municipal retirement partially based on what the bonus would be, but also based on we found a couple of small errors there. So that's why those went up a bit more than like what you would expect from $1,800 bonus percentage. Other than that, the budget should remain the same. So I don't know if Rebecca has anything specific to discuss. A lot of it's fairly flat to last year.
No, I mean, all of the increases reflect the actual price increases that we experienced in the last 2 years. And just anticipating that nothing that goes up ever seems to go down. My book prices and my movie prices and my subscription prices have never gone down in the 20 years I've been here. So I'm expecting that they will end up, being just that expensive. And that's really all it is. The whole budget is really just based on that.
Question, the passive line, we've got the same budgeted this coming year as for the current year. Is that because we don't yet have an official quote from passive?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
we should have that. Usually by the December meeting, we'll have that number from
Okay.
passive.
And passive is workers' comp essentially.
So it's general liability, it's workers' comp, it's unemployment insurance, it's all of our insurance.
So Rebecca, this is Bart. So if I'm looking at the total budget increase, it's just over 11%, which is about average for what we saw in the previous total, right? For the town, about 11% is currently configured.
Or you're talking about the tax increase or,
Yeah.
well, right now that we took the 500,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of that, I think, if you look at this budget, there's an 11% increase in salaries. And Rebecca, you could speak better to that, but I believe because you've had some staffing changes and that's why that's gone up.
Yeah, the hours.
Yeah, so the staffing changes, there are 2 people that I moved to VEMR's. One was a recruitment issue and the other was I guess a retention issue. So that they at least should be able to begin planning for retirement. And I thought that was reasonable. And the person I recruited, I really wanted to have. So it was an incentive for me to add that.
Yeah.
One expense that I don't see in here is any, there is in many other sections is for a copier. Is that included in the office supplies or?
No, that's a separate thing. It's kind of the slush fund for the public computer services. So it's what we charge people 20 cents a page to copy. And I mean, we don't charge them for the use of the computer or we don't charge them to scan anything. So it's what replaces the copy printers. It replaces the monitors, the desktops, and I just keep it there because it's, well, I mean, knock on wood, the machines are old, but they haven't died yet. So I have not replaced them.
See that line item, is that?
It's a different, there it is.
Is that
No,
not
that's
it?
not it. So.
No?
And that doesn't include the book sale there either, does it? Or is that separate?
No, that is entirely separate. It's part of
Right.
the Friends 501c3.
Right, I thought so, yeah.
So it's not very much money for a computer. So we've got $2,500 for computers, the computer line item and
Well, the computer
$2,200.
line item is for staff computers. And the
Okay.
copier fund is what was named for the things that provide services to the public. We have an entirely separate room. And it's those computers and those printers and that paper and that toner.
It's not in this budget.
But it's not part of the operating budget.
I'll just say that seems confusing to call something copier and have it be other things. that what we're saying?
Well, it's not in, I don't see it anywhere in that.
Isn't this your reserve though? I think, isn't that it right here, the library reserve?
Well,
under-
that says revenue and donations.
Right.
The under reserves?
Wasn't there a, Connie, where, isn't there a copier reserve? Or,
No, that is the one, for whatever reason, that's the name that was,
so the
Kevin?
Yeah, so that looks like it's about right. 2,200 is the balance now.
Why don't we put that in here or somehow? Because it's income? Is that income?
It's income.
So we make money off our, what happens when you need to replace a copier?
That's what we use the money for.
It's $2,000. That's a good deal.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the two multi-function copiers that are in the public room, I got for about 600 each about 2 years ago.
Could we see the budget again? Where does that expense show up in your budget if you
It
buy
doesn't.
a
It doesn't.
That was my question.
because you're taking revenue directly from copies, putting it into that reserve fund, and then
Yes.
buying things directly out of that reserve fund,
Yes.
sort of like,
And that's a different reserve fund than the library reserve fund.
Yes.
right, because the other reserve fund, right, this is more of your capital reserve fund, right?
As opposed to your operating reserves.
And this one, I think, is actually funded, right? Isn't there a line in the, library reserve? I think it's an actual
Yeah.
line from revenue raised by the taxes to go into that library reserve, and that's more for building, I think, expenses.
So wouldn't it be more transparent, a line for buying copiers and putting revenues into
I
the
mean,
reserve?
it can be renamed. It was just a name that I inherited.
Totally fair. I think, yeah, some of this stuff. I was just thinking, because an earlier conversation, how do we be more transparent? And I've looked at these budgets a lot and I had no idea that was buying copiers and publicly used computers. And if I didn't know, I'm guessing the average citizen doesn't know. So
I think
maybe
so.
just a way of making
maybe,
it.
I mean, maybe just for transparency, you can name it something like public tech services.
Yeah, something like that.
Connie?
so this is very much like the same exact thing that the fire department does. They have their own separate little bank account and it's funded with donations, and sometimes they use it to buy equipment for the fire department or other things. Jerry's there. I'm not sure if Dennis was there. Maybe they can speak to it, but it's the same exact idea. In both cases, they're very tiny bank accounts. I think the library, haven't you used it a couple of times, like to go get, I don't know, coffee or something like that at the market?
Actually, I think we've gotten it to, buy stuff for when we have a program and, don't want to put in a order. I mean, I don't really know how to do it with the market other than get reimbursed. But then we pay taxes, so that's the only
Oh,
problem. We get
We
sales.
actually, we have an account at the market, Rebecca.
Okay, so I should refer them to that. Okay.
Yep, I just need to give you the PIN. You may already have it. You need a PIN and we have an account with them.
Oh, I can say
Uh,
tax exempt.
But if that's what that's why what are we going to use it for exactly? Because we can't name it public
Well, we do
tech
have,
stuff
we
if it's
do
other
have a
things.
copier, we do have a policy for the copier fund. And it does say, I don't have it memorized, but it does say that this fund is to be used for the maintenance and replacement of public computers, equipment, copier machines, toner, copier paper. But we did add a line that says, or other expenditures as approved by the trustees.
Bird?
I'm just, I think you've inherited a budget. I'm guessing 30 years ago, what you had in the library or your predecessors had in the library was in fact copiers and not computers.
Yeah.
And then somewhere along the line, the public wanted computers. And I think it's clearly appropriate for libraries to have computers available for public use.
Mhm.
I'm just thinking how to be transparent. And Connie, I think it's a little different because from the fire department, because last I knew, the fire department doesn't like loan out their trucks or give equipment to
true?
people to go use.
Love to drive one.
And I think it's just qualitatively different than a library where people come in to use stuff. And I'm thinking it could grow over time. You may want more computers and more equipment for people to use.
We need a
that-
bigger room. The room's pretty full.
I just think you should be transparent about what they use. It could be tablets, there could be a variety of things. You walk around the building with a
Well,
Wi-Fi tablet.
I would say what they use it the most for, that room for, is actually copying and faxing.
So, to me, when I look at the reserve, our reserve fund tab, we have these little accounts, this is a relatively small account. It's only $2,200. And we have tennis for $349. I don't know. They don't do much for me.
I will just say I have a bias where I've worked with much larger budgets. There's a line item that says copier and it's for a copier.
Yeah.
It's not for a copier and other stuff.
And that's the
my
way it
view
is
is to be
under admin as
transparent.
well.
Yeah.
I think, and maybe even the fire department that might have a copier. I don't know.
You guys have a copier?
They use the libraries.
You do have a copier?
We have one.
Okay.
Yeah, and that would be under like office supplies probably in there.
That has a copy.
But I think, yeah, if we change this to tech services, public tech services, I think that's more direct.
Something like that. I don't have a strong opinion. I defer to you or maybe Rebecca.
Use more
I
transparent.
think I like the addition of the word public, because
Mhm.
it separates it from staff machines and staff printers. And it's that little corner room that people use to come in to copy stuff like their passports or medical records, and then fax them. And they can print directly from their smartphone, but if a lot of people forget their their stuff, they have to log in to their email. They can do that on a machine that's linked to a printer. But that's the room that it all happens in. So I would say, public technical is a great name.
Connie's got her hand up. If you
Connie?
can see that.
I'm 100% with Jeff. It's one less fund to manage. It's one less bank account to reconcile. Why can't we scrap it all together and have it be part of the operational budget? Because in my opinion, that's a service that the library is providing, so it is operational.
No, I'm fine with that too.
I don't see anybody here on the select board going, no, so
And
we're
then
fine
we
with.
can, and then we can just run deposits over and say, put it in this line.
Well, that's for the revenue. So let's go
Yeah.
back to expenses. Where do you put expenses? If you buy a computer or copier for public use?
I would say office supplies.
Or do you have a separate
You have a separate.
I think you have a
computer
separate-
line item.
public
Yeah. Yep.
use?
Computers.
Oh,
Technology,
that's fine.
Use technology, sure.
and then you put like, I don't know what you spend, but you put like $3,000 there per year, and then on the revenue side, you offset that with $3,000 in revenue.
Yeah, I don't really like.
Or whatever, you tell us what the numbers are, Rebecca, I'm just sort of.
Yeah, no,
pulling
that
a
works
number out
for
of the
me. And
hat.
I think 3,000 has been the sort of working balance for the last couple of years. We've been taking in enough money to buy what we need, and it seems to have been level at 3,000. So that's a good figure to put in.
I do
For the
like calling-
revenue.
I do like calling it technology as opposed to office supplies, because I remember the public looks at them and goes, that's a lot of binder clips.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, I thought you wanted it to go subsumed into an existing line.
No, we just want to be clear.
Okay.
The name of the fund was kind of murky, and we just want this to make sense.
And when I first got there, that was the only thing the library provided, was simply a Xerox machine.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I will ask the auditors how we go about
Creating a new
closing
space.
that reserve,
Oh,
what
right.
we do with the money. And it may go under miscellaneous revenue to start.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for the library?
Not tonight.
Rebecca, I think for the moment, I'm looking around, I think we are good with you for now, but you're certainly welcome to hang around.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, thanks for doing this.
And if for anybody listening at home, the library book sale still needs baked goods. Seriously. If you want to bake,
Oh, well, then I'll put in a reminder. It's December 1st and 2nd. And we're not taking donations after Friday.
of books, you mean, or
Of books, yes.
I'm gonna have to go through my-
all the cool people will be
You hear
there.
that, Emil? Emil,
Lisa?
She's talking to somebody.
Oh.
She's good now, I think.
Okay, our next item, our next department to look at is fire. If fire wants to come up to the table and
Always well represented by fire.
And fire did not have any changes since last time.
First off, Dennis, how are you feeling?
yes, indeed.
Better than I was a month ago.
Good. It's always good to be on an upward. It's good to be on an upward trajectory.
I was almost there.
Okay. Who wants to?
Well,
We're
there,
not changing anything since.
there were no changes since last time. So unless there's been any questions or anything that Dennis wanted to address directly, this could be quick.
Maybe let's just look at the bottom line. It's
Yeah.
one place I go if we're like at 11, like, and this is under 11, although fire is relatively sizable.
So I had a couple of questions. Under training, you've got $1,000
Yeah.
for training.
Mhm.
That seems light to me. Do you mean you guys? Seems like you guys might be doing more training than $1,000 worth, but I don't know.
Probably around $1,000.
If they got a whole bunch of new guys, they would, but right now it's,
There's a lot of your training. Oh,
Two
sorry.
new guys.
what's for
We
Jerry?
just picked up two new guys and we're probably gonna pick up a third shortly.
That's awesome.
So does that training go to their initial firefighter class? That's what $1,000 goes towards.
Well, we just had one person that joined. He just went through the basic class on it.
But
That's
that's
really
what the
good.
$1,000 goes towards, because you guys do a lot of the training yourselves, which doesn't
We
cost.
did things for training and stuff like that.
So last year you had $2,000 in this line item for training, and this year you've got 1,000. I was just wondering, you know. I
Well, I
was
think-
surprised it went down.
Yeah, part of it was they only spent 283 last year as well, so. I think that's why part of it. To go down, because the actual was pretty low, right?
So, quick question to Dennis. Did you put roughly $30,000 in for a new water line for the station?
New what? Wi-Fi?
Water line.
Water line.
Oh, I don't see that. Water line, from, you mean from where they're changing the road?
Yeah, so they're moving the hydrant and they're willing to put in a extra pipe for us. We've only got a 3/4 inch line that goes to the station now. So we have to fill a 1,000-gallon tank to fill the trucks in the wintertime. Because we don't want to freeze up a hydrant. So Steve, go ahead, Steve.
Well, this came about when they started the construction project up there.
Mhm.
And I was kind of mortified that the firehouse in Richmond only had a 3/4 inch line, which is conceivably only to service homes.
Yeah, right.
And that, yeah, they had to have a tank inside that had to, keep full to be able to fill. When most municipalities install a firehouse, they install an inside line that's big enough to fill their trucks. Inside, you know,
Is it like a
inside,
2-inch line or what?
some go as big as 4.
This came up when we put the new water line out there,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't remember why we didn't run it right to the firehouse, but there was a reason.
This, so when the new water line was installed, and I have the blueprints, there's a 4-inch main valve already installed on it.
Mhm.
And that 4-inch main valve nipples down to a 3/4 inch line, which services the fire.
So it's 4-inch to the curb stop, and then it's a 3/4 inch to the firehouse.
Essentially,
Yeah,
So it's essentially from the curb stop to the building and up
yes.
with a larger diameter pipe.
Yeah.
Where you can actually use it to fill a tank in a reasonable time frame.
I'm gonna ask a question and I don't want you to answer it. Would this have been a lot easier before they put all the fill in?
You don't wanna know.
No,
Okay.
we're,
You can answer it then.
so the two things are kind of related, because that's when this came up. The fire hydrant has to get moved up there, and part of the changing of the road, the fire hydrant and some of the valves are gonna be raised. And my thought at that point was, why does the fire station have a fire hydrant down over a bank?
Mhm.
So let's move it up to the parking lot height,
Mhm.
which they're gonna do
Mhm.
as part of redoing that. The other thing was the question about why doesn't the firehouse have a line big enough to fill trucks already
When the line's right there.
when the line's right there? So they are also, it's my understanding, I
By the way,
believe,
Mel,
add on,
the library will take books up until Friday.
I got it, yeah.
they're going to add on, one stick of pipe to that 4-inch valve that's there.
Mhm.
And then, at some time in the future, when they have enough money approved, the firehouse would like to have 4-inch line right into it. Which
Right.
I don't see why there's any reason why they shouldn't.
Well, how much would that cost?
They've had it estimated,
I only have one estimate, the other guys haven't showed up yet. But he estimated around 30,000. It's probably gonna be less, because there's other contractors that are less than what, yeah.
but I will say,
It doesn't seem like a like or nice to have kind of thing. It just seems like a more of a necessary kind of.
Well, we envisioned this when we put the new line out there, and I'll have to look back through the notes. There was some reason we didn't run it right into the firehouse. I can't remember what it was. But this is the time to do it.
so, you can run the 4-inch line in. They can have access to the 4-inch line to fill the trucks. And they can still tee off from it with a 3/4 inch service line
For that shower.
for the rest of the stuff.
Good.
There's no reason why not.
Now, the parking lot, your driveway are being redone too.
They're being
right?
raised.
Yeah.
So we need to do this before that's
Before
done.
that
Yeah.
happens, right?
Yeah, it's
And
gonna be
we've
almost
already
level
had
from the street.
discussions
isn't it?
with the state. And they're going to raise the fire hydrant up to the parking lot. And they're gonna raise our valves to a manageable height to keep them out of the, cause that's basically coming up where the valves and the fire hydrant are. Basically, that's coming up about 4 feet.
Oh, 4 feet.
Yeah,
Mhm.
The question would be when, right? You know, so you certainly wouldn't want to pave it
And then dig it
and
up.
then dig it up.
Why not? We do that everywhere else.
happened.
We don't.
Like the state.
But I think they're moving the fire hydrant before they finish and pave, and then it's in it,
Yeah,
so
that's all.
it's gonna be from the fire hydrant through the parking lot that's not getting paved to
Yeah.
the building. Everything else is gonna be with the project. Does that
Connie,
make sense?
Connie and Pete both have something. Connie,
So I think if you look at the maintenance general line, the 10,000, I think that's where Dennis had me put the water line up. Nope, up, yep. There you go. If you look at the comment there, Josh, it might say water line to station. So that's one thing. And the other thing that I was asking is that won't run through the meter, will it? Because if it runs through the meter, we're gonna have to increase the water bill. Or the water line.
no, Connie, the service line for filling the trucks would be essentially having a hydrant inside.
Yeah.
They could tee off from that with a 3/4 inch line to service with our meter
Okay.
to service everything else inside. It's all the same water.
Okay, so it is in here and it is listed in here and it's at $10,000. Is that,
Well,
that's
should
what
that
that's
go
what
up,
you're saying, right?
but maybe that should go up to 40. I mean, if there's 10,000 in general building maintenance that you need in a year. Right, or it was only 4,000 last.
That's the only thing that Dennis gave me for that 10,000. That's what that's scheduled to go towards.
That's earmarked just for the water line.
There's no doors or anything like that going on. It was just the water line.
Well, what if something breaks? Wouldn't we use that? Like if they needed. I don't know.
Somebody drove through a roll red door.
Well, not an insurance claim, like if a door breaks.
That's
so you need to fix-
Okay, Pete,
So what should that, yeah,
let's get Pete.
Question for Dennis. Do you know where the service line enters the fire station?
Yes. Right
Is
out in
it-
back station.
Goes to the rear of the building?
It goes right, well, the
Makes
water
all kinds
meter's
of
right there in back station.
Yeah,
Right behind the old Maxim Bay.
Yeah.
Okay, oh, okay, the add-on, okay. Yes,
right in that alcove.
yeah. I mean, I can offer this. There's no reason the town, we couldn't do the digging, the excavation for this new service line to get it to the building.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably gonna be 5 feet deep. We'll insulate it. It's pretty straightforward work for us. So if you got a $30,000 estimate, I think you can cut that into quarters if we were to do it. We won't have that inflated price, but just something to think about if we're tight with budgeting, you know. I agree with Steve that should have definitely be there to fill those trucks. Yeah. So if it goes around the side of the building and it's an outside excavation, it's fairly straightforward for us.
The only other thing back here is the natural gas line.
I don't want to play with that one, but we'll make sure it's separated from that.
So my observation is between the 10,000 and Pete's subsidized work by the highway department, is that adequate to get to a water line, a 4-inch water line?
I mean, you would have, I mean, it would have to cover the materials, but.
Yeah.
I mean,
So if it exceeded that, could it come out of the fire department reserve fund?
that reserve fund.
$5,000 or something like
I
that?
was gonna say, I think that reserve fund is earmarked in the capital budget for trucks.
Yeah.
So if it went over by a couple of thousand, it would essentially be an overspent line and then it would, go towards that
Well, we have impact
reduction of.
fees too.
unassigned fund.
We've got $26,000 worth of impact fees, so.
Can that, what's that restricted to though? Is there restrictions on the impact fee, Connie?
Yeah,
Right.
there is that. It's supposed to be geared towards things that they have to do due to the growth of the population.
Well, maybe could this be argued that this is something? Yeah,
Absolutely. So-
We've
so
also
I-
used it for the down deposit on fire trucks or for the chassis.
I think I could justify it.
So you can find something.
Yeah, well, I think I'm not too worried if we go for about a couple of thousand. I mean, how much can parts be for that, for a line?
it's just
4-inch line is pretty pricey. Steve will tell you. You're probably, what are you thinking? Like $20 a foot probably for something like that?
Yeah.
I mean,
and the only other thing is, maybe some thrust blocks on the corners, but
So $2,000-3,000.
But you also mentioned insulating it. How much does that cost?
It's just the
well, that's
board.
board.
blue board, that's, yeah.
Okay,
Hundreds of dollars, maybe.
okay.
Okay,
Well,
so
we can bring, we don't have to get in nitty gritty, but I just threw that idea out there because, if we don't have the 30 grand, then this is another option. I mean, we can make it another project for highway to do. We'll budget it, we'll schedule it, I think it's the biggest bang for the buck, like we did Volunteers Green, like we did Bridge Street, like we did East Main. That's town-owned properties. I mean, if we can save a significant amount of money, I think we should be doing it. So.
And I have the utmost confidence in Pete being able to do the job. And the water department likes to work with the highway department.
Well, that would be the other part. You'd work with us on that, yeah. But I
Yeah.
mean, getting that dug around to an access point under the slab, I don't think that'd be too hard.
So this is Mark, just coming back to the budget. Thanks, Pete, for that, and remind people that this is why Pete came to us a couple of years ago with some sort of extra capacity to take on things exactly like this. Instead of paying 30 grand for a project, we'll do it in-house.
But we can have them mow
In a week.
instead, right?
Yeah, so I think that's a great approach, and it seems to me, at least for tonight's purposes, the 10 grand probably works with in-house work and put that on kind of the radar.
As I say, I had the 10,000 in there for, like you say, the in-house stuff, because this water line is brought up after the 10,000 in there.
Yeah. I thought we had this all resolved.
Should we make it 15? I don't want to nickel and dime it, but I don't want to, you know.
Well, I mean, if it's any way we can get a materials list together, then we can, throw a contingency in there and, you're gonna have to put a meter in there for a new meter for the service line, because you're gonna split it from the forward to a service line thrust block. Someone will have to build a materials list. And then we got an asphalt patch project to do. So, we can itemize this all out as a project.
Yeah.
What you'll take out is the equipment and the labor will already be covered under town departments, which will
Maybe we
be.
come back to this in December, that.
Yeah, I
that
think
particular
for now,
line.
we've got the idea out there and in terms of budgeting, go ahead.
If necessary, we can go into the reserves, if it's 5 grand short.
I can honestly say you won't do it any cheaper than doing it in-house.
No, yeah, right. I think
Thanks,
good.
Pete.
Okay,
Well, I had-
always
question.
here to help, so.
I had two other questions for the fire department. We have two line items for equipment purchases. We've got, what was it? The 57 line item and 93 line item, down towards the bottom there. How much of that, does any of that come out of reserves? Because we also have a reserve line item for equipment.
So we've got this one here, right? The equipment purchase line.
Equipment purchase.
Yeah, that equipment purchase, and then we have safety equipment and gear and more. That's somehow very
The
different.
Safety equipment and stuff is for bunker gear and MSA air packs and stuff.
And what's equipment then? So how is that different than
That's
equipment?
what I think it's what, Connie, we changed that line item for the bunker gear and the air packs, right?
Right, so that's safety equipment reserve.
Safety equipment.
So, and I think, so last year you had said that the equipment purchase was exhaust fan, chocks, airlift bags, generators. I think there was a few other things in that comment as well. We don't have a note for this year though, but usually you have a list of things that you're trying to get upgraded around the station or with equipment for responding to fires. It's not safety equipment, not like personal safety.
Maybe
equipment.
be under equipment purchase.
What's that?
Maybe under equipment purchase.
That's what that's what I'm saying.
So there's a distinction between safety. I would characterize safety equipment as things that you wear and that protects, the individuals. And equipment purchase is more like, I don't know, some pumps or I don't know what.
Chainsaws.
Chainsaws and we're changing over, we're in the process of trying to change over gold, called battery operated.
Yeah, they're better.
and Stuff instead of.
They're better. They'll start.
gas And we have right now, jaws of life and all that, are all battery operated.
Yeah, much better.
And it works great so far.
Okay, because it's a lot. It's $35,000 worth of equipment, so that's a lot. And does any of it come out of reserves at all? Because we do have a reserve line item for safety equipment and gear. We've got $35,000 in that.
So that's specific to the safety equipment. So this 5,000 here is a deposit into that. And we started doing that a couple of years ago because some years you're outfitting one firefighter, some years you're outfitting 5. So we started to put it into a reserve so that way we would have money as the numbers fluctuate. And I think you just recently purchased a number of things for safety equipment, like the air packs. I think you got you had the bottles all
We did
set.
the
We got our air packs and bottles and we just purchased some more bunker gear.
So that's why that,
Bunker gear and the air bottles and the air packs. all rotation, so they buy 5 this year, and then next year buy 5 instead of buying 20 all at once.
Yeah, well, I'm not questioning at all, buying, I'm just trying to figure out where the money's coming.
Right, and that's where I'm trying to explain how we've constructed it.
So the problem is the NFPA and ISO have the life limit on a lot of this equipment.
Yeah, so
Right, they
I'm aware
expire.
of that.
Big year is 10 years and
Yeah.
you have to replace it.
We're gonna have to buy likely a lot of equipment for police as well.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so, and our balance in the safety equipment is 35,000, up from 18 last year. Or projected year, and I don't understand what the,
A lot of the stuff that we ordered last year, we never got, it never came in.
We didn't prepay them, right?
No.
Okay,
They
so they just,
It's just
They did what I-
vendors just couldn't get the material, equipment to send to us. I think like Pete's ran into the same problem too, getting stuff.
so my only point here, I don't need to go into too much detail, is if we're, at the end of the day, we're looking for savings, to try to get down below 11, and this may be too little amounts to make much difference, but, I think, a way to reduce the budget is to use the reserve money that we have set aside for the kinds of things that we have set it aside for.
And so an example of that, then, if you go back to the expense line or the budget line for this year, is that 35 might be tweaked downwards.
Yeah, that's my point.
So maybe we just put like highlight that or a note on that, like a color, something to flag it.
And I don't question that you
Right.
need it, and you gotta have it, particularly if you got new people, that's awesome.
Right.
That's terrific.
and we're not allowed to use them up. We have to take care of them.
Yes.
Cause you 3 new people, they get voted on, we're gonna have to buy bunker gear for them.
Yeah,
That's okay. That's okay.
$3,000 a piece, so. 3,000 plus, and it takes 6 months to get it.
Hmm.
We just ordered something, well, we just got some bunker gear the other day, and I think we ordered it 9 months ago.
Yeah. Oh, good. The next one's,
Well, one more quick thing, and Jeff and I have been talking about it.
yeah, heat pumps.
Heat pump for fire station. When we turn the heat on in the meeting room for when we're up there doing our administrative stuff, the whole furnace kicks on. It doesn't heat the rest of the building, but has to circulate all the water. So I did a couple estimates, and one was 7,000, the other was 4,000.
Yeah, it's gonna be more like 4 or 5, probably. Something like that. And I think it's a good use for a heat pump, really. It's it's a small space. I think it can fit within this budget. It's equipment, maintenance, it probably can fit within this budget. It'll pay for itself. It
Yeah,
should pay for itself. And
I like mine
there are
too.
incentives involved. We are doing an energy audit of that building. So they'll give us a recommendation on what size.
Did you call them? I have.
They're gonna call me.
Okay. Cool.
Then I'll call you.
All right. Sounds good.
Promise.
Okay, anything else relating to fire?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Okay, our next agenda item is the police. And do you want to discuss it?
Yeah, we're gonna do variations.
Right.
And we also have Chief Cambridge here tonight. I saw him on the call, so if we have some specific questions,
We do, or we do?
we do have him here. I thought I saw him, right? He's still here. Chief, you're still here? There he is. Let me pull up the correct, let me stop share for a minute and find what I want to share. I'll make this bigger.
Okay, so as Josh is bringing that up, we discussed earlier unassigned funds. And there was a lot of discussion about how we had a decent sized chunk of money unassigned left over at the end of each year. And a lot of that comes from salary savings because of police we didn't employ. And questions have come up multiple times over the last 12 months of why are we budgeting as though we had a fully staffed police department when we don't, since this just leads to having a lot of unassigned. And so in answer to that, which the questions we've gotten from our taxpayers on that subject are very well taken. You know, what is the sweet spot for budgeting? And so the chart that Josh has up, which was in the packet, is comparing fiscal year 24. That's the first column, and then 4 different scenarios. The first scenario, the second column, is saying let's just budget the exact same thing we budgeted this year. $384,599 in salaries, for example. Version 2, which is the most expensive, says let's budget as though we have a fully staffed department, including a chief employed by Richmond instead of contracted out. And if we have 4 officers and a Richmond chief, that's 5 officers who need cars. We no longer have 5 cars. I guess we have the Tesla and 3 others, correct? Okay,
So this accounts for
We still haven't sold anything, I don't think yet.
purchase of a car
right.
as well.
Okay, so yes, we would have to pay for a new car if we did that. The option 3 is to say, well, we're going to have 4 officers, but we'll continue to contract with Heinsberg for police chief services, and that saves, what is it, about $90,000?
That's option 3 here, so that goes down from 710 to 7.
Okay, yeah, you're right. I was looking really just the salary line up above.
Oh, sorry.
But no,
But
but
the full
obviously
salary.
the bottom line makes a difference because we're not paying Anthony in terms of salary, we're paying the Heinsberg Select Board or under a different line item. But, okay, and then the 5th option here on the right is, in terms of salaries, the cheapest. It's saying 3 officers. So the salary goes down, but then we're still having to pay Heinsberg for patrol and shift coverage and the chief of police. So four models based on staffing, but at the bottom and end of the day, at the very bottom.
Similar.
Yeah, there's not, the 3rd column over is the most expensive. That's if we're budgeting for, that's the fully staffed department. At
That's
5
the fully
cruisers.
staffed and 5 cruisers, yes.
So that's just kind of by way of explaining to the public why we're even discussing this, because people don't like seeing every year this seemingly very large amount of unassigned money. Why don't we budget more accurately? And since we don't have a crystal ball, unless Jeff knows something I don't, it's a topic we need to figure out. Josh, rather, Connie, do you want to speak to this, or Anthony, do you want to speak to this?
So I guess the only thing I'd say as far as current staffing levels in the police department, or what we hope to have current staffing, we did interview a candidate a couple weeks ago that I think we're getting closer to being able to hire that candidate. And Chief Cambridge has a couple of other candidates who have more police experience that we're going to start the interview process with them shortly. So we potentially could have 3 hires here within the next few months. Plus Officer Wilson is currently still on staff. He's been deployed a bit. But that would give us our full 4-time officers at that point.
Yes, sir.
There's something that's not making sense to me here. I'm a little lost when I'm looking down the table in version 3 versus budget 24. Everything's less, and then the bottom is higher. What's the difference?
Version 3.
I think it's the way that we are now paying for
Contract services chief of police.
right.
So the regular salaries in fiscal year 24, my recollection in the current year, the first column, version 0, include budget for a chief salary, did it not?
It does, yes.
Well, so something appears to be wrong to me, because we wouldn't be paying for police salary in regular salary for chief, and also contract for a chief further down. It would seem to me version 3 has to, by definition, be cheaper, less expensive than version 0.
Is the first column budgeted or actual?
budgeted.
Okay.
So yeah, here are
It's the
budget.
con-
Hold on,
it's
what
the
I'm trying to see
Chief
the
services is the difference.
else, it's different.
So where are the chief?
I think we double counted. It would, if the chief was budgeted
There
in
you go.
regular salaries at the
that's
very
good.
top,
I'm not seeing.
But
it.
there's, yeah, so,
then it
right,
could go down substantially between version 0 and version 3.
yeah, you're right.
Connie?
Oh, no, I think.
No,
Connie-
it's the wage, remember, we adopted Williston's wage scale for the police officers. Plus, in these scenarios, we are budgeting for some corporals, not officers. So we're doing, instead of budgeting for just 4 officers, we're budgeting for 2 officers, one who's quite high up on the table in years of service, and we're budgeting for 2 corporals, which is higher than officers.
So what did we budget for a chief salary in budget 24 in version 0?
I don't have that at my fingertips. Josh may.
It's not plausible.
I don't
It's
think
gotta
it's
be
there.
much more than that.
Yeah.
So, you know, so version 0 would be budgeting for 4 officers and a chief.
Right,
Not gonna be $350,000. That'll be more than that.
well, so
That
Uh,
was done before we took on the Williston pay grid,
I think,
fiscal year 24.
I think a lot of it, well, the pay grade went up, and then in this one,
Would be version 2 then.
I added this in as a new officer, Officer Wilson, and then 2 corporals sort of at the mid-range level. So I did bump them up just because thinking that's sort of what we have maybe in the hopper here, looking forward.
And nobody answered my question of what did we budget
I
for
can-
police
Let me see if I can find it.
salary in 24?
Let me see if I can find that quick.
It's just, it seems,
I don't think it's there.
No, I mean, I've got breakouts for 24. Let me see if I can find where we were at with that. It's just gonna take me a second to dig into my files.
I have an unrelated question that might be easy to answer. For Anthony, for Chief Cambridge. So, Chief, do we need to buy all new equipment for our officers? Our new officers coming on, like vests and guns and all kinds of stuff?
Tasers and
No, we don't need tasers. There's going to be a lot of equipment that's needed, including bulletproof vests, duty belts, things that go on the duty belt, things that go on the vest, pouches. I purchased handcuffs this week. That should cover us for at least our first 2 hires.
Some of that's
Purchase
gonna come-
softer.
So some
Can
of
you
that
hear
will
me?
come this budget. And so what I notice is that we typically budget about $10,000 a year for equipment, and this year it seems like it might be a bigger year, but maybe it comes out of this year's budget. I don't know.
It's going to be a work in progress, and I figure we also have to keep in mind that things do expire. There's a lot of things that we just don't have, but I typically will buy out of an equipment budget. I will purchase usually 2 vests per year. That's essentially $3,000 right there. 1 handgun, and I just kind of try to keep track on keep current on things. So if we're starting, this first year is going to be big if we're starting from scratch with a lot of stuff. So
That's my point, I guess.
Mhm.
Is $10,000 going to be enough? If we have to buy
all that stuff.
all that stuff?
We might want to bump that up a little bit and then just so we don't have to overspend the item. And if it comes in under that, well, okay,
Okay, I've got the number when you guys are ready.
go ahead.
Okay, so in FY 24 for salary alone for police chief, it was $79,280. So roughly 80,000 in just salary, not including benefits. And I think at that point, I'm seeing that it was vacant, because I think when we were doing the budget, that was not finalized then. Right, because we had interim chief with interim chief Eric, so we actually had that position as vacant. So we probably budgeted it as a 2-person healthcare plan, which would be another. Connie, what's a 2-person health plan? 15,000 roughly
Yeah.
or more.
No, it's more.
So it was
It's
80,000-ish,
more.
but for just wages.
So right, then if we add the other elements, it's well in excess of 100.
Mhm.
Can we go back
Yeah, I'm gonna
to
get to
the
that.
version 0 to
Yep.
4? This would then suggest that at least there, we took away 80 and we put back 10,000 hours a person. Did we raise salaries $10,000 per officer?
All because of Williston.
They went up a lot. A
Well,
lot.
yeah. I don't know how,
Did they go up $10,000, which
Yep.
is,
They did. If you're
Wow.
moving positions from officer positions to corporals, they absolutely did. Plus, we're not starting them at step 1 or whatever it is on the grid. We're starting them halfway up the grid.
and so how did we budget in version 0 for vacant positions? Were they all assumed to be 0, starting at the bottom of the pay grid? Do you see my confusion here?
Yes.
It's like, if the chief disappeared and it only went down $40,000 or $38,000. And it just, and then the total goes up, including health insurance and everything else. I just want to make sure that we're doing it consistently, or eyes open to understand why it went up so much.
let me see if I can. So I think for. So it looks like we had. A sergeant at step 15, an officer at step 14, an officer at step 6, and then a vacant officer at step 1. And is what we're looking at for the officers. So that was sort of 2 mid-range, 1 lower, 1 starting out for FY24.
So
And-
if the backup is there, it seems, my first reaction was it seemed implausible.
Mhm.
That we would save over 120,000 and then spend even more. But we can sort this out.
Yeah,
Now, the next one, just to make sure,
yeah.
because I'll just be transparent. My natural inclination is to lead towards version 3, but I honestly thought it would be less expensive than 24.
So what I think we can do, because we've got the backup for how we built 24. We can kind of like pull names off of that and call it positions, and then we can look at the backup that we have for how Connie built version 3, and just show those numbers so that it's easier to see. Make sense?
I can tell you, I know of one position alone that went from $26 an hour. And for fiscal year 25, that's going to be over 40. That's
No,
how
wait.
that's how much the Williston pay grid changed
But
what
wait.
we were doing.
Connie, what's that? The $26 an hour was, what was that? Like step 1 for an officer, and now we're saying that we bring them in.
No, it wasn't step 1. I can't say without it being in front of me, but it was not a new hire. It was someone who had been here.
But that
Okay.
person's not
A little
going
bit.
up from 26 to 40. Because of the, like, what I'm saying is like, there's not one individual person that's going up 1 step on the new pay grid and going up from $26 to $40 an hour. There wasn't that much of a jump to go. to
No,
Williston.
well, it went from like 23 wages. And then bump that up, bump it up a step for 24, bump it up a step for 25. Landed in the over $40 an hour range. Which is why when I ran these numbers for police chief, the version with the police chief being in it, it had to go so high because I had to bring it in halfway up the grid in order to have that position being paid more than the next highest officer or corporal.
Okay, there's a lot of question marks and stuff here over our heads.
I think, yeah, you would need to see the benefit projection worksheet and that would
I
break
think
it
we
all
should
out.
bring that next time and take a look and just be able to take a better look at the versions, yeah. Cause it might be better, like, easy to explain, like baseline, and then here's the details for versions 1, version 2, version 3. And here's how we went from this position to that position where we're budgeting.
Mhm.
So, all right.
So that said, I think, recognizing that some of that math shouldn't change substantially between the other versions other than 0. Some of those things are all gonna jump presumably. Version 1, if it's flat to 24, it kind of doesn't make sense if version 1, it seems, is not on the table because we've already made changes to
Mhm.
everything. Right?
Yeah, that's there kind of just as a baseline.
So it's not really a baseline because that's not what we're doing anymore.
Right.
So I think what we're left with, if we go back to the top, is really
3 or 4.
2, 3, or 4.
1.
And I think 2 seems optimistic, and I was starting to gravitate towards 3 or 4 myself. And
Mhm.
maybe that's just,
Which is, it's within $2,000 difference.
Yeah.
And a lot of this will depend on what we can attract for staff.
Yeah, if we hire all the ones that are currently in orbit, but we don't know that they'll all take the job.
well, if we go back to the top again, if we go between 2, 3, and 4, a difference is, are we doing 4 officers or 3? Are we contracting with Heinsberg for
Shift
patrol and
coverage.
shift?
Right.
And are we buying yet another cruiser?
Yeah, so that was a question I had too, is about cruisers.
And so maybe we table this a little bit, but
Yeah.
I was again, just to be transparent, I think 1 is off the table.
Mhm.
I think 2 is implausible because it seems optimistic to say, as we get rid of cruisers, we're gonna suddenly need another cruiser. I think
Yeah.
we might need one.
We don't have we would have to start a whole chief search.
Yeah.
And no one, I think, has the appetite for that right now.
Right. So
Unless-
it's really 3 or 4.
Unless you overdo the eggnog at some point, maybe then. Yeah, 3 is the one I gravitated to, but 4 is a possibility.
Well, a question I had on 4 is the relationship between contracted services and salaries. So if we have 3 officers,
Mhm.
if we actually were able to get 3 officers, is that?
Not counting Kevin.
No, that was counting Kevin. I was saying we.
Well, I mean, right now we've got a patrolman candidate and 2 corporal candidates plus Kevin.
Right.
Right,
So-
so
If Kevin ever actually works a shift, but
I'm not kind of counting Kevin because he doesn't really cost us anything at the moment.
Mhm.
So does the 3 officers count Kevin?
It does, because budget wise, we would count
We
him
only have
because
2 officers,
we would-
2 additional officers.
assuming he's deployed, yes. If he's not deployed, then we
And
would have
that's, and
3.
that's why the contract services for
That's why we kept,
patrol services would backfill, that,
yeah, days that we couldn't cover and if we wanted extra patrol.
and the other question I think that you were getting to, Bard, was cruiser, we'll have to think about whether or not to
get a second Tesla.
well, we're not talking about the Tesla.
Might be
But-
quicker to get a Tesla than other cruiser.
But the other cruiser is a 2019, I think. It's a Ford. Last we checked, it had about 50,000 miles on it, a little bit more. And it seems to me that the cruisers, the trigger should be mileage. When do we want, it's a proxy for, how well it works or not. And I don't think we're gonna get $3,500 for the old ones.
Depends on
We
if
ought to
Dick and
just
the
get-
loser
I
up
think we
there
ought to
looking,
just
right?
get rid of them myself. But,
I do.
so, we could come back to this. And I think, we should throw the cruisers into the mix of and get, maybe, ask Chief Cambridge to give us an analysis of what that those are good or not.
I have a genuinely stupid question. I'm directing at you because you work for the schools. When I grew up, the schools did driver's ed. And they had a bunch of really crappy old cars that we used for learning how to drive. In Vermont, do the schools, who does driver's ed?
You do that.
So would you think the schools would be interested in a couple old?
Kidding? Have you ever driven one of these cars?
Well,
It's 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. You
okay,
don't want a student driver in one of those.
okay. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Well, if the thing is, if they're that good, then why wouldn't we get 3,500 for them?
Well, because they sat for quite a while.
Okay, so some nut like him might see it as a fixer-upper. So,
So I think that 3,500 or not is kind of a red herring
Yeah.
here, because this is the big picture where we're talking,
You're right,
you know,
You're right.
plus or minus real money. And so I think coming back to it, maybe this is a question for Josh Anthony. You know, one of the differences here is 3 or 4 officers. If we wanted to hire 4 officers in the next 12 to 18 months, how plausible is that as an achievable goal, do you think?
Chief Cambridge, want to comment on that?
So we would.
I think the biggest issue we're going to have as far as hires goes is not hiring, it's getting people on the road as far as equipment. And I think there's no doubt that within, I don't want to give a limit, but we're going to hire, and that's just a fact. We will hire. These positions are going to get filled. The more positions you add, the more positions we'll fill. So
Not a different message that we've heard before.
Yeah.
We have somebody else
So
different
we
in
would be
hiring.
hiring 3 because we will, in all scenarios, we keep Officer Wilson,
Right.
whether or not he's actually
Available.
available and whether or not he actually costs us anything. And so does that reflect the version 3? Does that reflect paying Officer Wilson
Yes.
for the full year?
That assumes that he's not on deployment, that he's here working for the full year with wages and benefits.
Okay. I think we have to assume that.
Yeah.
that somebody's
Okay.
here but not here, so to speak. We have to budget for it. And it was really a question of how reasonable is that? And then, so Anthony, if we were going to hire, if we had 4 active officers, where does that leave us with vehicles?
We have 4, right? Officers plus chief.
we just have to consider that as per the contract, minus the chief, every hire has to have a car. I've been very vocal about, sort of disagreeing with that, but it is what it is. So if we're saying 4 officers, there's no doubt that we need 4 cars.
Even for new hires? So we've got 4 cars, but would you be able to, if we continue to contract for chief services, would you have access to a Heinsberg car?
Possibly. I'm sort of in a Richmond car at this point.
It's whether or not we need 5 cars, is my question.
So the question is, could we use the car you're currently driving for one of our officers and pay you to use a Heinsberg car when you're over here?
Or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Or get a Vespa scooter?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think that the contract, so maybe that's where we're gonna go.
So the current contract and the current obligation for new people says you get one for up to 30 miles, right? And that contract expires when? End of June?
That's correct.
So this is next year's budget.
Yeah, you're right.
And so we don't yet know what next year's contract will say about cruisers.
You're right.
And there's a wild card about both cruisers and benefits and salaries, because all of that is subject to collective bargaining. So it's similar to an earlier conversation. There are the things we know, and the things we know, we don't know.
Yeah. And the things we don't know, we don't.
So there is some plus or minus embedded in this. And then maybe a follow-up question, if I could ask Chief Cambridge, if we were inclined to go to version 4, we look at the bottom line of 4 versus 2 and 3.
It's the same.
It's virtually the same.
It's really in the same ballpark. The issue is for version 3, if we had to layer a cruiser on there, we'd either be buying it from reserves or we'd be upping the budget to buy another cruiser. if
No,
we
that,
need-
it's in here, isn't it? No? Isn't a cruiser purchase in this?
Police cruiser purchase, third line from the bottom, no, nothing's allocated.
But if the new contract doesn't have a take-home cruiser for new officers, would we need a cruiser?
And that is one of the things to contemplate. So there are a couple of question marks. Maybe we should table this. And again, I think version 1 is not an actual possibility
Mhm.
based on what we've discussed.
Things have already changed.
And so I think it's really 2, 3, 4. It strikes me that 2, we actually put 30,000 in police capital reserve. Presumably that was associated with a cruiser purchase, right?
Okay.
That problem.
Anthony and Connie both have their hands up. Who wants to go first?
I think that we should be budgeting, given the shape of, I hate to say it because it is newer in year, but I think that we should be budgeting for a 5th car. That 4th car, that Ford that's in the parking lot now that I just put stickers on, is really not in good shape. I will fix it, but again, it's pretty bad. It's as bad as the 17s were.
We should vote to sell it and move on.
We need,
Well,
I know.
worst
get it.
case, we leave it as a 5th.
Right.
It's so, Chief, how long does it take? We've been told that we can only order a cruiser in January and it takes like
18 months.
12 to 18 months to get it. Is that your experience?
The only time I had trouble ordering a car, it took a little longer, was just after COVID. Took about 6 months. I would say somewhere between, depending on when you order it, between 3 and 6 months. I don't know where this January thing is coming from. You order a car when you need to. It all depends on the model year. I just ordered the Charger. It took 3 months to come in, and I had to wait a little longer because they were changing the model year. And they said as soon as the new model year is coming in, you can build your car. You call, you build your car, and it comes in. There's no cutoff. I'm not aware of that. I've ordered many cars.
So if the car that you're saying is as bad as the 17s, is something that we're basically pouring money down a money pit on it, there comes a point where we just add it to the junker list and we budget for another car.
Could be, that could be, and it might not be, one of the reasons we tried to get so far ahead with our reserves is because we thought it was going to take 18 months to get one,
Mhm.
and we were going to order it early and to get it. But that does not appear to be the case.
Hmm.
And so one car, I'll just throw this out here. Is one car that has become a popular police car is a Ford Mustang Mach-E. It's an electric car. And it's bigger than this Tesla. It is a full-size police cruiser. If you look at the gasoline line item on this, we're assuming we have 3 gasoline cars and a $25,000 fuel budget, and one Tesla with a $1,000 fuel budget. Just saying.
Yeah.
And that is actually our experience, is that we pay $6,000 to $8,000 in gasoline for our gasoline cars, and it's more like $1,000 for the Tesla. That's why Kyle wanted it. Tesla kept sponsoring it.
Mhm.
So it's not crazy to have that size car was a problem, but the idea of having an electric police car is not a bad idea.
Well, I'm still looking for nuclear, so. Okay, so I
So-
think we've agreed. Go ahead.
I think the biggest thing to not, the Durangos are in pretty good shape. I just got a clean bill of health on one of them. We spent about $1,000 getting it, new rotors, brakes, and stuff. But I think not having them sit the way they were is a huge thing. And whoever, whether it's me or somebody else, whoever is running the department, really needs to check on the cars, once a week, once every 2 or 3 weeks, and just see what cars need. I don't think that was happening exactly. So I think those two things are what kind of got us in the position that we're in. They were very very rusted, the 17s. When we took the lighting out, the first car we stripped, approximately half of the lighting was not working. So to not get in this boat again, the Durangos, the Tesla, I think are in pretty good shape. It's just that last Ford. So
We'll have to, in collective bargaining, this is definitely one of the topics to,
Yeah,
if people aren't taking their cars home and we can garage them when they're not in use or something.
Yeah, because it's rare, if ever, do we have all cars in use at the same time.
Right.
For Richmond service. Right, it's the only time they've been used at the same time is when people have taken them home.
Well, to illustrate, maybe we'd ask Anthony. Anthony, in Heinsberg, how many officers do you have and how many cruisers do you have?
we have 6 officers, and we had 5 cruisers, but we were always cycling a cruiser out, it seems, and we had 5 cruisers for about a year. Now we're going back down to 4. Ideally, we always have 4 cruisers, and one's kind of always on the way out, and so we're down to 4 right now.
Connie?
A couple things to point out. First, in version 1, we did flatline it, and in that version, it's 4 officers and a chief, so we would need another cruiser in that circumstance, but we just flatlined it. Josh and I had batted that back and forth. In the second version, where we're putting 30,000 into the reserve, that would be needed to add to the money that we already have in the reserve in order to have enough to purchase a cruiser and outfit it. We stopped contributing to that reserve. So it does not have enough in it to buy and fully outfit a cruiser.
Oh.
My guess is that would be around 70,000 is what we were going with. I don't know if it would be more than that or less,
So
depending on what we go with.
We had a full department. Do we need 4 cars? And maybe, with
Depends on what the union-
we might only need 3.
Right,
Right.
and we won't know probably, I mean, I'm sure that contract won't be finalized till after March. Just knowing these things take time. So I think for budget purposes, we need 4 cars for 4 officers, and we have to figure the chief out somehow.
Okay.
Okay.
So are we prepared to move on to Pete and Highway? Highway, Recreation and Trails, actually. Seeing no objection. Thank you so much, Anthony. Welcome to hang around, of course. Is Lisa frozen or is she just very still?
I think she's very still.
Oh, she's moving. Okay.
She can hear us too.
Well, once in a while you think somebody's very still, it turns out their connection hung.
Yeah, no, it's good to double check. We'll go to recreation first, I guess.
Okay, Recreation first. Do we have anybody here from?
We got Pete. I don't know, is anybody from rec committee here?
I put a picture of myself as my.
I knew you went out and played golf.
We're doing recreation now?
Yeah, right now, the only change was I just added a line for gardening and landscaping. At the last meeting, we talked about, should there be a line for gardening and landscaping? I don't think we've seen a recommendation from the gardening committee on that.
I asked them for one and I didn't get a response back. I need to nudge them and get an answer.
So other than that, no other changes or updates for this line.
So, recreation salaries are for,
Paying referees?
No, I think, is that for Karen for cleaning, Connie, for the most part? Yeah,
okay.
so that's, cleaning the restrooms and things like that.
I noticed that we had a Lake Iroquois Recreation, both in the recreation budget and in the charitable
So
contributions.
there's 2 organizations. There's the Lake Iroquois Recreation District, which is actually its
Right.
own district. It's formed with bylaws and the ability to kind of assess appropriations from from the towns that the lake resides in. And then there's the association, which is more of a homeowners association that we also contribute to, and their big thing is doing the milfoil. So they're two separate entities that are funded differently that both do work with the lake.
You should name them differently then, maybe.
But one is called, I think, district, and one is called association. And yeah, I've always been, it's taken me a couple of years to really separate those two out in my mind. The district is more of a formally formed organization that sort of has quasi taxing power of the member towns. Whereas the association, I don't think we have to give anything to the association, but I think that's done by the association of the property owners there. And then we've traditionally given them some money because we wanted to support the milfoil removal.
I've actually been impressed by their presentations. They've done presentations on.
And the effects that they've had have been really
The
amazing.
lake is great. And I mean, we've gone there several times. It's not green. And my son caught a huge fish the other day.
Oh, really?
Like how,
Like a 2-foot pike. It was gigantic.
This
do
big?
you catch and release or do you keep it?
Oh, we
Got one there that was this
it
big.
jumped off the dock before we could do anything with it.
Yeah, I've heard that one before.
Oh, I got a photo. I'll show you.
Yeah.
Here,
Well, can you share it for the people at home? Hold it up to the
Yeah,
camera or?
yeah, here you go. So just for a good fish story.
So
Um,
one suggestion I would have, I've heard a lot of concern about park maintenance.
That's a fish.
So there he is.
That's a pretty good size.
Yeah, one of the things that Denise and
5-foot fish.
one of the things that Denise,
Now you're pushing it. 2 foot I went with.
You notice how every angler puts the fish in front of them?
Yeah.
He's only 10. He picked that up quick, right?
So I've had a lot of comments directed at me about that we could do better with park maintenance.
totally agree.
And I think one of the challenges is who does it, who comes up with what are the projects and what needs to be
I
done.
think Denise and Friends Committee that's one of the things we're looking at.
I hope so. So I'm hoping that we direct either the recreation committee or the 3 parks committee or both or some, if we need new picnic tables. And
Well, the metal ones are in pretty good shape. The wooden ones are not so.
yeah, so, okay, this is a good line item for it to come out of.
Mhm.
And the question, for instance, is how many picnic tables are enough?
Mhm.
Like 3 or 4, probably not enough.
And I could see this being, an annual thing, that we do a picnic table rotation a year or 2 or whatever. But, somebody needs to come up with what that is, and it would seem like the recreation committee would be a good one to do that.
I think that's a great point.
And they're coming to talk to us next week.
Good.
You went to their meeting, right?
I did.
Mhm.
Loads of fun. When Bart and I went through the charitable appropriations, there seemed to be a number of items that look like they might fit within the recreation section. Things like Camel's Hump Little League instead of a charitable appropriation. That's more like it. That's more like what I expect.
We're looking at a little, what is that, a little sunfish? Right?
I think
Yeah,
it's
it is.
piranha.
It's okay.
Perch, okay.
The Little League might fit more appropriate under the recreation
Mhm.
line item. And then there's some, you could consider Hale and Hardy
So
recreational activity.
update on Hale and Hardy. They submitted a form, but did not actually ask for money. And I think when Duncan looked at it, he looked at like the total budget line is right next to how much are they requesting. And he grabbed the $5,000 when he put that summary together for
Yeah.
us. And so Linda came to me then last week and said, they didn't request anything. I said, well, they submitted a form. And if you look closer, it's a $0. So I updated that here on this budget.
Okay.
So we don't have to worry about Hale and Hardy for FY
But
25.
where it lives in the budget, it seems to me,
Sure.
if it lived
If it
under the
lives somewhere.
recreation line item,
Yep.
the intent here is trying to narrow down the charitable appropriations to be like things.
Mhm.
You know, and we'll get to this, you know, but since we're on recreation, there is a number of things that it seemed like that to me. You know, Halloween kind of.
Definitely, if we fund that at all, it's,
We funded it all, you know, again, the Lake Iroquois Association, I don't know, that's a good distinction. I don't
the
know.
association one could make it plausible, pay for it at the conservation fund.
Yeah, that would be that would be actually more appropriate. And similarly, maybe the community band is a recreational activity, maybe.
It is, it is for the members, you know.
And so rather than, you know, I mean, I'm thinking of, to me, this is just me, but I'm thinking of charitable appropriations, things like cots, you know, or age well, you know, things, those feel more like charitable appropriations.
But again, you know, we have to go back to the whole Dylan's rule thing. Are they fulfilling a legitimate governmental function?
So that's a different conversation, and I think it's one we should have. But you know, personally, what I would like to see is our charitable appropriations have a bottom line number, and then we fill that number with, you know,
Until the money's gone.
You know, with appropriate organizations. But things like Little League, to me, is more of a recreational activity.
Jeff, I would only add, I think, if you agree with this, is that I think some of our longstanding practices have been longstanding, and in the interim decades, the relevant statutes have changed.
That could be, and so, yeah, we might need guidance on that. You know, fireworks actually could be under recreation. Yeah, maybe it is, I don't know.
Lisa, go ahead.
Thanks.
It is.
Yeah, Jeff and I both, when we're attending, well, at least I can speak for me and I think for Jeff, when we're attending either rec or VGBC committee meetings, we're advising them anything that they plan on pursuing for capital improvements or improvements of any sort. Count the maintenance factor too, because we need to know that. And even if they don't pursue new equipment, we need to know, we don't have a good idea of what maintenance costs should be. We know what they are, they're not enough. And we're asking them to turn those in, you know, as time goes by, so we have an idea of what to project. And, you know, right now we're not projecting, what are we projecting for maintenance cost? I don't see it there. 3,000? No, that's, anyway, the point is, and also who's going to do it? There's a question, you know, should Pete's crew be the ones to do it on an as available basis, or should there be a contractor hired to do it on a rotation? And it's not me that needs the information, it's these committees. They're kind of running somewhat blind in a direction, and it's not the best use of their time. So just for what it's worth.
Okay.
Move on the highway.
Move on to highway. Pete?
So with highway, just to kind of real quick, the only things that we changed was we added in the bonus for people at the very end of the pay range, adjusted Social Security and retirement accordingly. And I think, yeah, we added in $10,000 for traffic calming measures, knowing that we'll probably spend that on something. Speed bumps, reflective crosswalks.
How much did the speed bumps come to that we bought?
Pete would know off the top of his head, probably. I don't recall.
It wasn't a lot.
It's just, I get so many emails from people saying, when are our speed bumps coming in? When are our speed bumps coming in? The people on the eastern end of Cochrane Road are about ready to march at my house if I don't get them in there soon. And I understand that, you know, they don't like having to live on a drag strip.
Well, I heard that within 2 days after they were removed on the western end, it was back to, you know, Indy 500.
Exactly. I'm a big fan of getting speed bumps in, as many as we think we can plausibly rational and justify.
So those are the changes since last budget. Other than that, we haven't made any changes to highlight.
2%.
What's the bottom line?
Yep.
2%, 3%.
They're pretty, pretty good.
That's impressive. We have a lot of retirements of, it looks like of, bonds, equipment, right? There's a,
Well, a lot of this was in 23, so that came off in 24.
isn't, all those blank items there, a lot of them are retirements, aren't they?
Right, but what I'm saying is like these that are blank here
Yeah.
were also off in 24.
Yeah.
So that's not gonna contribute much to the change. Although here, right, yeah, here's a group that's like $70,000 worth
Yeah.
or $55,000 worth, not 70.
And the sidewalk, the sidewalk reserves, are we
So I think we
might be
took,
done with new sidewalks for a while, it would seem.
I think we
We've got
took that
this
out, but
new-
we didn't get the grant for Jericho Road.
Right,
Jericho Road.
but we've
So I
got the
think-
Bridge Street ones.
And we had talked about maybe we don't want to put a reserve fund in for the Jericho Road, but rather bond for that. Because we wanted to vote for it rather than,
Right, there was that. And Pete and Connie both have some things to add here.
Keep, jump in.
So just to back you up a bit, back to the traffic calming measures, the $10,000. My advice is to actually create a reserve line for that because we may and or may not. That's if you put it in a working budget, that's saying you're going to spend $10,000 every year on some kind of devices. And then that might not be the case. You know, you might wait a couple of years, you might spend more or less, but just a thought there. If you put it in a working line item, then you're saying you're going to spend that every year. And that's a commitment, I think. So just my opinion.
Okay, Connie?
Connie,
Connie, you are possibly talking, but you're
Sorry.
muted.
On the new sidewalks that only pertain to the 2 Bridge Street sidewalk project. So we don't need to contribute that to anything this year. But Keith is here and my understanding is the Transportation Committee is going to be coming with some big asks and will want a new reserve created to replace the new sidewalks. So you can wait to hear from him.
And that's also for the monorail, right? The Cochrane Road monorail?
The Jonesville Express.
Can, you know, Pete made a suggestion before we move on. Do we want to entertain that to consider?
A reserve fund?
Yeah,
I think it's a fine idea.
well, you know, it would.
We need more reserve
Spend
funds.
$10,000 next year on traffic calming. I would be just disappointed if we didn't next
and we
year.
don't have to do it forever,
Yeah,
but it seems to me a plausible thing. Given that we may not be exactly sure of what we're gonna buy and when. And that reserve seems more appropriate for that, if
Could
you're
be,
not sure
you know.
what you're gonna use it for. Pete, that was kind of your thinking, if I understand it, right?
Yeah, by putting it in a line item, 6304, it's saying that, yeah, we're planning on spending $10,000 somewhere in the town. You look at what the actual for 23 was 2,600. Those temporary speed bumps we put in, the actual rubber bump, they're about $2,000 per crossing. And then the signs were about 150 a piece, and there's 4 signs. So not overly expensive, but very difficult to remove without destroying them. So if we were going to start making this a regular habit, we might want to look at a whole different type of system, which may cost a lot more money. But I think if you have it in a reserve account, that way you're not committing to, we're guaranteeing we're going to put $10,000 worth of something out on a road. It's not that you don't have that fund available, but you're choosing when and where to use it.
He just randomly throwing this out there because it's been a couple decades since I read the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices cover to cover, which I did once. It was a weird year.
That's a big
A lot of
book.
other towns around us, they just put asphalt speed bumps in, like on
tables, I think they're called
speed tables.
Yeah.
and I would imagine they have a lifespan like any other asphalt surface. What are your opinions on putting in some of those where they're not removable, where they're there 12 months a year?
Well, I mean, obviously, there's gonna be more expense to put them in initially. It's you've now committed forever to have that speed table in place. You know, like the Jericho Country Store and like Huntington has done, just for a couple local towns to compare it to. You know, Shumpike Road has a series of them, like every 300 to 500 feet.
Right.
So,
And Poor Farm Road and
my opinion is, you know, I don't like speed bumps, but it doesn't matter what I like. But if you find that you know, if you're constantly wanting to put something in a certain area of town, that may be a better way to go. But that again, that's a bigger decision that I can't make. That's a permanent obstruction in the road.
We have a study that's gonna be telling us.
We do have a Cochrane Road study that's being worked on right now.
now, is it going to consider types of speed bumps like speed?
So it's going to consider, I think, and Keith can maybe speak to it better than I can, but I think he got his hand up. It's going to consider a number of different types of traffic calming devices. So speed bumps, chicanes, bump outs, crosswalks. But maybe that's why Keith has his hand up. He probably has a better idea.
Keith?
Yeah, I think what you're dealing with is a temporary situation. I think Pete alluded to that. He's got to remove them every year or not. And the speed tables will be a permanent addition, which I don't know what the lifespan is, Pete. I would imagine 10 years. It wouldn't be the gift that keeps on giving, you know, like the speed bumps, the temporary ones. But we do have the Cochrane Road study that's in process now. We have hired the engineer. CCRCP is involved. It's been fully funded, but this is a scoping study at this point. So, you know, we're not even in design yet. So we're still a year out. So, I mean, my push would be, you know, for what it's worth, is to do those traffic calming measures at a level that you feel you're comfortable with. I don't know how well those speed bumps are going to hold up over time, though, to be honest with you. And that's something we have to lean on Pete with. So that's my 2 cents at this point.
You know, it seems to me that they were somewhat controversial to put in, but they worked. And yes, they're temporary, but I think we knew that when we put them in, that they'd be temporary. But it was an attempt to address some you know, pretty specific, pretty vocal concerns.
Justified concerns.
I think that they, you know, I think the people on the east end of the road would like the same attention.
They absolutely would.
So what my question on this particular line item is whether it's enough. You know, if we were to assume that we were putting them in on the east and west end of Cochrane Road alone, just as our experiment, you know, would $10,000 be enough?
Well, based on what, you know, he said they're about $2,000 plus 150 other signs. If we've destroyed the ones we've got, so 4 speed bumps, 4 signs, that's less than 10,000. But then then we've expended it and we don't have money for anything else. I would still do it in a heartbeat, but even if they get destroyed every year, $10,000 to make Cochrane Road usable for the pedestrians and people who live there.
I think that we have more information next year when the study is done, and then we might do something.
Yeah, I'm just disinclined to wait for the study to tell people you just got to keep waiting. I know people are trying to mow you down every day.
But that's for the speed table. So that's for the permanent solution.
Right, but
the temporary one, I think we should do it.
Yes.
You know, as soon as the snow melts.
Connie?
So I want to be sensitive to the topic that has come up about creating reserves and a lot of objections over there with all these reserves and all the money that was in it. And also our reserves are usually done with a very specific purpose in mind, such as purchasing a specific item or a specific project. What I'm wondering if it would make sense if we did with this exactly what we did with the legal reserve line up in planning and zoning, and that is create the reserve with a cap. So we don't just keep putting 10,000, 10,000, 10,000 as it builds up. If it doesn't get used, we put a cap on it and we say we're going to keep contributing until we hit that cap or until there's a specific purpose in mind. Just food for thought. I thought it was going to work good with the legal reserve and planning, but we overspent the cap that was on it.
Yeah, personally, I'm kind of comfortable with $10,000 for this year, and we'll figure it out next year. You know, when we have more, when we have the study, I don't think it's going to be hard to use $10,000 on traffic calming. And
Pete, how much would speed tables cost to install?
You're talking about a full asphalt speed table?
Yes.
Probably pretty close to the same amount of money if we were to do it ourselves. It's just an asphalt table about 6 feet wide with a slower ramp on either side. But they're permanent. That's the thing. So, it'll have a line striping item that have to be striped every year to pre-warn that bump, that speed table and whatnot. The other variables that we're not all thinking about is our police force. If we should end up with a police force within a year or 24 months, we may have a lot more police presence for all these roads, and we may have more traffic control going on with the police department. Right now, we've been, a couple of years with nothing. So, there's a lot of variables out there. That's all I'm saying. So my thought process was just get it in a reserve account so you're not committed to spending all of that. And if you want to spend it all, it's still sitting there. It just it gives you more options for the use of that 10,000.
While we're discussing this topic, we have a habit, myself included, of acting like Cochrane Road is the problem. I get a very vocal group of people on Heinsberg Road who I don't hear from them as much, oddly, but on Heinsberg Road, I say that they believe, and it's hard to persuade them otherwise, that we cannot just unilaterally lower the speed limit, that the state will only do so with speed study, and that we did a speed study there in the last 2 years, and they said the current speed that we've got it set at is the right speed.
for half of Heinsberg Road.
Right. But writing letters to the state at this point is not going to get them to change their mind until something significant changes. So if it's legal to put speed tables in, I think a speed table at a couple of places on Heinsberg Road, but if it's not legal, then
I think the speed's too fast.
Yeah, let me talk to that. I mean, these kind of obstructions you put in a roadway, you're not going to put them on any roadway that's over 25 miles an hour. You're going to send someone right off the road into a tree. So these are made for low speed zones, just so you're well aware of where you can use these kind of things. You don't see a bump out on a 50-mile-an-hour road. Someone's going to crash into it. So it's just
wishful thinking.
So that's something to keep in mind. So like your 45-mile-an-hour roads, it'd be very difficult to do something like that without a speed change. And it's going to be several different speed zones to get them down to a 25, where you could put a measure like this in. So
we just don't have the permission to lower the speed, so we're out of luck. Any measures that would not launch cars into the air that we can use on higher speeds?
Radar signs with the blue lights. Targeted.
Police force, blue lights. There you go. Hate to say it, but yeah.
Put in a bunch of S-curves.
Chicanes, yeah.
I think Richmond's full of those already naturally.
I got one of those. I'm not liking it.
Right.
Well,
I appreciate you keeping it down to 3%.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's a big budget item, big budget department.
and you promise we will not have any more 1,000-year floods next year, right?
Well, I don't have your crystal ball, but if I did, I'll rub it, because I don't want a winter like we had for the summer, because if it does come May, we're going to be looking at some really ugly numbers. But hey, we can't control it. It is what it is. We do our best. So,
and there's still only just one salt supplier for us to in Cargill. But we used to have two?
Yes.
Yeah.
And one
American Rock was based out of Middlesex, and they both service District 5, American Rock and Cargill. Cargill bought that whole service area out. Now it's Cargill controls the whole district up here. We can buy salt out of Albany, New York. It's about the same amount of money, but there's no guarantee on service, how many days out it'll be. Cargill is now ramped up to serve this area. They did a great job last year. Unfortunately, salt went up $2 more a ton this year.
Yeah.
So
I'm not alleging that Cargill is gouging us. It's just, you always like when you're buying things for government to get multiple bids if you can.
Yeah. Well, so the state does this bid process and it's by district. And so the towns can piggyback on these bids. And that's what we've done forever. You got to go with if the state's buying large, multi-million dollars worth of salt, they're going to pass that unit price on to towns. And that's what we do. So, we use a supplier. It's out of state. Well, we got a massive freight cost on top of that unit price of material. So, yeah,
so
there's a lot of formula in there, but so we typically piggyback on the supplier that's handling our district.
But absent a crystal ball, this is about as good a budget, I think, as we're going to get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And right now, in terms of culverts, you've got a culvert inventory, right?
I do.
And right now, we don't have any culverts that are overdue for replacement.
Well, when you say that, what's diameter? Smaller diameters, 24-inch and smaller are on our regular maintenance list. So as we do roads, we upgrade those as needed. The larger diameter, 36-inch and bigger, typically fall into the grant programs, the structures grant programs. So we're really sitting pretty good. And this flood took out a fair amount of them, which you'll see in the FEMA claims we're going to get reimbursed on. So
yeah, good. Okay.
No, we're not looking horrible with that. So, but the unit price of them have gone up considerably. And I didn't change it because all the culverts we use this summer, I'm anticipating FEMA to reimburse us for those. So we'll have our stock back. So we'll get that stock that's been sitting on, in town. We'll have that again to use next year. So we're going to get a little bit of a buffer. Next year at this time, it could be another $5,000 on that line. I don't know.
Right, but one way to look at it is we got some culverts replaced ahead of time, and at the end of the day, the feds are going to pay for it. So we didn't like the circumstances under which it became necessary.
It could be 3 years before they pay for it too. So who knows? But
Did you, when you were replacing those culverts that washed out, did you upsize them at all, or did you just replace it with in kind?
no, we upsized most of them. Most of the ones that had the major erosion issues, we went bigger in size. We're allowed to go one size if FEMA will cover that. If we go bigger than that, then they want an engineering study, which when you got a road that's not passable, you don't have time to do an engineering study. So I already kind of had a little bit of a go around with Snipe Island Road. We went from basically a 36-inch culvert to a 60-inch culvert. We had the 60-inch in stock, and the brook was big enough to take it. So I made the call to I'm going to put the biggest one I can put in here now and be done with it. And they didn't really like that I did that. And then one of the guys that was in the meeting said I did. He said, you did the right thing because you may have saved the town a lot of future issues.
Yeah.
And they're going to cover it, but we had it in stock. So that's what we used. So,
Well, you might be saving a few houses some issues too.
Yeah.
Private property.
well, it's a dead end road and there's 2 homes beyond that culvert, which will be landlocked. So, that was all part of it. It's like, let's not put the same thing back in the ground that doesn't work.
Right.
Let's go bigger. So, and it fit, we had the cavity and the brook size to that would handle that. So,
Well, I'm sure Wright and Cindy will be pleased to not be landlocked and their neighbors.
no, they're very happy with it. Yeah.
Okay, so are we done with highway? Any other questions for highway, Lisa? Okay. Well, Pete, thank you. I guess we're ready to move on to planning and zoning.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks. So no changes since last time. So following Bard's lead, we'll go right to the bottom line. And then, which I think is a great spot to go to. We get up to where planning and zoning is. Here we are. So there's our bottom line. And Keith, you may have things you want to talk about or add, or just
Yeah. You make sure I'm off mute, and I am. Check that out. I've done something right. The big kerfluffle right now is the transportation planning line, which is 43.01. That was set up last year to cover matches. And I have a philosophical issue with that, having an operational budget cover matches that haven't landed yet. And that's what I'm dealing with right now in my head and inside the transportation committee's head too. So they're going to come to you on the 11th with a proposal to hopefully move things into a reserve fund for these types of issues, such as paying for the 20% matches to grants that have yet to land. I do anticipate pursuing one grant for the Thompson Road, Bridge Street, Cochrane Road, and Huntington Road intersection there. So if we could put something into a reserve fund for that in anticipation of that, that'd be great. I know that the chair, Chris Cole, has a certain way that he likes to do things. He is extremely knowledgeable about these types of processes. And that's really the only line that I have any issue with whatsoever. I did drop it down. Connie and I dropped it down from 20 to 15 on the transportation planning line, based on what we have in the pipeline for projects. Everything else is pretty much static, to be honest with you. I mean, we dropped the office supplies and office equipment based on what the current projections were. So we went with that. Advertising's not an issue. Figured we could cut that a little bit. Contracting services for planning and zoning, I'd love to bump that up, especially with the housing issues that we have and the need for consultants potentially. But that's probably not until next year, to be honest with you. I think we can work with $5,000 at this point, especially since the planning commission really doesn't have a lot in the pipeline either at this point. Just going down, engineering is another issue too, but obviously Pete has that covered with the highway. We use engineering for reviews of commercial projects for the most part. Case in point would be the Richmond market that's going to be going in here soon. I probably would tap an engineer to make sure everything is being done correctly. But we'll figure that out as we go down. The legal reserve is still kind of nebulous to me. I'm not exactly sure how that works. I'm not sure if $10,000 covers everything. I have to rely on Connie for that. But we held it at under 7%, barely. And a lot of that obviously had to do with the increase in wages. So that's where I leave it, and I'm open to questions.
So this is maybe a question for both you, Keith, and Connie. So the transportation planning item, what's the plausibility of calling that transportation planning reserve and put money in and take money out?
Well, my issue is it's part of a operational budget that has no line item for something that exists. Nothing exists for those monies to be spent on at this point. And I think that's my philosophical issue. I don't have an issue with it if you want to keep it in there. And I know I'm waffling a little bit on this, but I like usually the budgets that I run, and this is my first one with this town. I like to keep it as simple as possible. So I'll let Connie speak to that also.
So I offered them some different ideas, and I totally hear what Keith is saying about the planning and zoning operational budget versus things that may or may not happen in the future. We could always have another category. So where we have different departments, we could have one for transportation and have a reserve line in it for planning and a reserve line in it for construction. Certainly the construction line still lands in Fund 11 for highway, but it would not be in the highway operational budget, which Pete likes because he has no control over that. He's not part of the project at all. It's not part of his operational budget, but it lands in his Fund 11 budget. The planning portion would still remain in Fund 10, but it would have a section all for itself, which I think would be very transparent. I've always struggled with the idea that, oh, hey, we got a grant to do some scoping or some planning. Hey, Selectboard, can we do it? Well, yes, you can do it. It's not going to cost us that much money because it's not going to cost much in taxpayer money. But the bigger picture is we need to be thinking, what could that cost us in a project? So we really need to, when we look at these grants, I always say we got to look at just not what's in front of us today, but what does this project, what does this planning mean if it actually comes to be, and what are the future costs of that? So for that reason, I like seeing that in a separate category. It's really transparent to the public that these are things we're looking at, but I still would want to restrict those reserves to something being used within 5 years. I don't like the idea of a reserve that we're going to start putting money in that may or may not happen 10 years from now, much like what happened with the Jericho road sidewalk. Had we done that, we would have put a lot of money into reserves for something that didn't end up happening. And as I said, what I'm hearing a lot is people are getting real touchy about our reserves.
I just have one comment, Jay. This, you know, having seen a lot of the regional planning cycle, there's the front end, which costs you money for like sort of the planning, which is typically a fraction of actual construction. So I sort of, and I think of the cycle of you pursue grants to fund the planning and engineering and scoping. And then when you get to major construction, you got to bond for it. I don't see us saving millions of dollars for a construction project that's 5 years out. And for a couple of reasons. One, because, you know, you can't plan that far ahead. And secondly, I think it's somewhat disingenuous to build the construction budgets out of current taxpayers for something that nobody will perhaps benefit from for 10 years. Some of those taxpayers won't be here anymore. So they will contribute to something
that they don't ever get any benefit from.
So I just, maybe this is arbitrary, but I've sort of distinguished between the front end. We need sort of like the earnest money or kiddie money in the poker game, just to stay in the game and get the planning and engineering done. But then the construction is, from my observation on the significant projects, a really different scale that we can't save for. I don't know if that makes sense, and why I think it might make sense to have the petty cash kitty where we can get the engineering and get the ball rolling. And then once you get it started, you see what it looks like over time. Otherwise, we just add another year or two to the regional planning and agency of transportation funding cycle, and we turn 3 to 4 years into 5 to 6 years. So you agree we're comfortable with that?
And so you're speaking specifically about the transportation planning line item.
Yes, and where that takes us, if you will, in terms of.
And it you know, somehow the traffic calming relates. You know,
Not dissimilar.
You know, it does relate.
Lisa?
Yeah, I had a question for whoever wants to answer it, maybe for Keith, but Keith, you're showing there, well, I assume you had some input in these numbers for legal services, kind of up and down, but really not much budgeted specifically for a year. You've got instead of legal reserve. Is that sufficient? I mean, we've got some land use or, you know, development issues coming up in the future, I think, that might bring people out of the woodwork.
Yeah, I would say, Lisa, that's why we increased it twofold, because we didn't cover the limit. We broke through the limit, is my understanding.
Okay. Does the Development Review Board, if they go outside for legal expertise, does that come through this budget, or is it?
Yeah, we come through this budget. Correct.
Okay. So that is the legal budget for everything being protested by landowners or whatever.
Yeah, that and you know, Planning Commission with Dave Rue, we run a lot of things through his office on the amendments specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for planning and zoning?
Uh,
Okay, then we're gonna get to charitable charitable appropriation.
Or do you want to do quick town admin and assessors? There's really
Oh, I'm so
Yeah.
dumb. Yes, please.
not much, there's not much.
Sorry,
No, that's
it's
fine.
late and I'm tired.
Yeah, no.
Town
we get it.
admin and
I mean,
assessors.
we can go fairly quickly. The only changes here was we just added the VLCT dues. We put in what the actual number is going to be. Other than that, everything's the same as last time. So it was a very small change, I believe.
Do we have any money in there for intern if we were to hire an intern? I noticed planning and zoning had $2,000 for intern services, but it just suddenly popped into my head. Are we do we have anything there for admin?
We do not. No, not for an intern.
Have we looked at getting, there are certain times projects come around,
Mhm.
and we say, why would we have the town manager or even Duncan do that? Why don't we hire an intern? This would be a chance where we could put some money aside for a hypothetical intern, should another project like that come around. I'm just throwing that out there.
Do interns come around for?
I haven't had one in this role before.
Well, but you know, we have had those discussions about could we get some warm body to do this so that you're free.
Yeah, I mean, it could be intern or, I don't know, temp work, like you could kind of something like that, where like, oh, we've got a few things that are over the next couple of weeks. I mean, the interns, the only hesitation I have in interns is when I've had them in my roles in the ski industry, they're actually a lot of work. I'd rather just stuff the envelopes myself sometimes, or whatever the job is, because they're it's great. I mean, if you have a
They need some
rewarding, if
supervision.
you have a rewarding project for them, like it's wonderful, but it does take a decent amount of time to work with them. But if we put in something for, I don't know what we could do for temp work. I mean, there's certainly things that come up that we could look into.
Yeah, there's nothing right now that I'm thinking that needs to be done, but we don't need.
Right.
Keith, I would just real quick, I'm going to go back to you. I did see that you had that line item in the budget for intern. Have y'all ever made use of interns?
We did make use when Revy was here. I have not had the time to go ahead and research that. I know I've spoken to Revy about that recently, and we're going to be resurrecting that up next year, hence why it's still there. So the short answer to that is yes.
Okay,
It kind of fits better with
it
planning.
does, yeah.
You know.
Well, if it should happen that at some point there is a project that we go, this is kind of mindless. Let's use Duncan for something that is a little more mindful. We can always just overspend some line item here a little bit.
There are a couple of, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just chasing after some weeds here. So VLCT dues are in town administration. Did I see that?
Mhm.
Where are CCRPC dues?
I think they're in planning.
Under planning.
They're in planning and zoning.
What about GBIC?
That's in appropriations.
So maybe that should be in admin. It
Oh,
seems
would.
like it's closer to admin or planning, one or the other.
Yeah, I was bleeding over a little bit into the next topic,
Yeah.
but in my head, I was thinking there were a couple and GBIC is the other one. I think.
Maybe I'm tired, but where are CCRPC dues?
Just do a control F.
Is that, no, where is, I know I saw that.
GBIC is under charitable appropriations.
Oh, regional planning dues, sorry, control F wouldn't have helped CCRPC unfortunately. So regional planning dues is here in planning, yeah.
Maybe we should just modify that to say CCRPC.
Yeah, that would be
Because
better. Yeah.
Right.
It's easier or more transparent.
On that,
Thank.
But you know, another one that's in charitable appropriations that in my mind fits better with admin is MMCTV. You know, because we get services from them.
Yeah, we do. I mean, they host our meetings and
But before you move on, what about GBIC?
Well, GBIC, I think they should be in admin myself, but I don't know, you know, I mean. It's pretty marginal. It's only $200. It's kind of a token. It's nothing to do.
To your point, it doesn't really fit into a charity,
Yeah.
if like, or a social service. It looks more like dues.
It looks more like dues, you know.
Does that seem reasonable with
I mean-
GBIC dues?
sorry, let me make a note on,
Like admin?
let me go back down to where we're at. So GBIC, you're thinking admin. I'm just gonna make some notes so we can change it here.
I think it was in charitable, wasn't it?
Yep, no, it is. I'm just gonna make a note, admin. As you were making some comments before, I was just some notes to myself, so next version, we can move things around a bit.
What do you think about MMCTV?
You know, I mean,
I think it makes sense under admin. I mean, speaking as the president of the board, I shouldn't vote, but we're not holding a motion on that one
Yeah.
thing. But in terms of what we get out of them,
Yeah.
MFCTV hosts our public archive of our meetings.
Mhm.
That I think is fits very well under admin.
And it's more a service than
Yeah.
a charitable
Charitable
appropriation, and we'll come back to this, but.
Yeah.
Is there anything else with town administration and assessors? Because we kind of just skipped over here a little bit.
No. Anything else from charity to move up there or anything else to
No,
discuss?
it's just before we go
General,
back,
sure, yep.
I
I'll
think
just
next
roll
would
back
be
up.
to go line by line through
Yep,
charity.
it makes sense.
Yeah, are we done with admin?
I think
If
so.
you are,
Okay, I'm done with admin.
then we're good, we're moving on.
Yeah, there's some like Kusi should definitely go under police.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, let's
Do
roll
we have
back.
a representative? I know June was our Kusi representative. Who is our rep now? Is that you?
Ooh, not me. Oh,
Then maybe do we, is anybody, Lisa, are you Anthony, are you our QC rep? Is he still here?
I don't know. Do we have it on our list of, yeah, sorry, I got too many things open here.
Does it pay well?
Yeah.
No, and it's kind of disturbing work at times, but
Yes, it does. We're gonna double the pay of.
Yeah,
the
that's
next
right.
person.
Percent increase.
Is it listed here?
we'll just do a control F on QC, but
Where would, how do I do that?
just control F. Select control F,
Oh, and that just pops up what I need. Oh,
be a find box and then just. You know,
gotcha.
if it beeps, then it's not there, but
Special.
it was a position that we had to,
No, we do have it. I just don't think it made it onto this list for some reason. Because you're right, it was June. I don't know that we have an active rep right now.
well, let's make an action item to follow up on that.
Okay,
Okay, so anyway, other things,
you want to go?
Vermont Family Network,
Well, wait, so wait a minute, under admin, we also have, community well-being,
so that's like all together now.
and that does not seem like an admin task.
There's not a really obvious spot that would be.
Well, maybe it, I mean, it's a
Social service.
service, right? Yeah, so I mean, it fits better with social services, you know, things like,
We have a social service category.
well, I mean, we have lumped them, I think we should have it, I think we should.
Okay, we could create a social service category and put these things like our community cares camp and so
Yeah.
forth that do actually act in a quasi-governmental way to provide social services.
So I don't think we're really done with this legal conversation, right? Like,
Yeah.
what are the buckets? And that was one that we contemplated. We had initial conversation about what does this bucket list, if you will, of charitable appropriations mean, and what's the statutory authority? And it's why Jeff and I were already leaning in this direction and sort of put gas in the tank, not to mix my metaphors, of putting things in other places where they aren't really charitable donations.
Oh, I
or
agree, yeah.
activities. And then what's left, we started going through, if you take these and move them around, what's left? Community well-being might properly fall down into this as a social service kind of activity.
And we have several, you know, like,
Yeah.
the Howard Mental Health Community Outreach is kind of a contract
Right?
service.
PCC,
Home
HOTS.
health, hospice. Rescue really is a service. It's not a charitable contribution. Service, a very,
we could put that under fire as, first responder kind of thing, or
to me.
it could be, you call it social service. I'm not attached to that.
I would call it, I mean, what Bart and I called it was contracted healthcare and social services. You know,
What exactly is
they are
Vermont Family
different
Network?
kind
We
of
got
things.
that.
We have an expectation out of it, a specific expectation. If you give money to.
Jeff probably.
God,
Jeff, what is Vermont Family Network?
Hmm?
What is Vermont Family Network?
I don't know.
It says it's a social service organization in Williston, and it's supposed to support children and families, but I don't know specifics.
Oh,
They do training and support for kids,
and
their families with like disabilities.
And that's, you know, for $500, we're not expecting a service out of them. We're contributing to their budget. It's a different thing. Right?
I'm not,
That feels a bit more like, I in my head, put them together in a list with like Vermont Center for Independent Living.
And Lund,
Well, they do some social service activities.
yeah, Lund would then go under, that's line 206, would be social service.
Yeah.
And Vermont Family Network at the top should be social service.
So, you know, we kind of thought actually the small ticket items lumped together well.
Mhm.
And then the big ticket items like, you know, Howard mental health, community outreach, think we should change it to community outreach because that's what it
Police.
put Howard mental health in it. I forget which way we went on that.
I could go either direction with community outreach, is that and community justice center. If
Yeah,
we're gonna
the
fund
CJC,
them,
that might come
kind
up
of
too.
are in
Yeah.
the same compass heading. I will say this, there's also a question that is not clear in my mind yet about what is our authority versus as a select board to just put in the budget versus our obligation to put
Take
things
the voters.
to the voters to say, sort of like conservation fund, you want to fund this or not?
Yeah.
And I'm not clear, we don't have clear legal guidance yet on that regard, but I think that will influence the decision that these things, although if things require a vote, it would go off in some other section unto itself, I think.
Things like rescue, you know, is very clear service.
Oh, well, it's unambiguously
And
so.
it-
No,
it's not a charitable.
it
appropriation
definitely doesn't go
line.
there.
It's very clear service that, you know. And, you know, some of these other things I would, you know, even the UVM home health hospice,
Turning Point Center is definitely social service at the bottom.
like visiting nurses is what I understand. it to be.
He's on turning,
What it
on
used to be.
UVM.
219.
No, he was, Jeff, you were saying UVM.
Set of
social
statutes.
service.
Oh,
Sorry.
UVM Health Home and
Specific
Hospice.
about
Yeah.
visiting
I'm
nurses,
just trying to keep.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm
Some
sorry.
which are variable.
But those add up, you
Mhm.
know, if you do Howard mental health, UVM home health hospice and rescue, you're talking over $80,000.
Mhm.
So it actually, it does add up.
It,
For social services. So do I have these notes right, where you're talking Vermont Family Network, Lund, Richmond Rescue?
SSTA
Tried to
is,
divvy it up, it was something that made sense to us at the.
did you
time.
put SSTA under social
I think
services?
we had it at our
Well,
last meeting.
Can you cross-reference? Let's go down the list one at a time. If we go from the top, are those the right categories in the note there?
And stay is, I just had that, is that also social
Age well, I
service?
think
Age
we
well?
have family network staying in this category as well.
But
We had-
stay is different than social service, like we're not renaming, so that would still be a charitable appropriation versus a social
And
service.
we had
Okay.
Vermont Family Network here as well, not social service. So it,
Okay, you want to keep that?
I don't
Okay.
think we named anything charitable appropriations.
yeah,
So then what do you want, for the ones that we're gonna stay in this area
and change the heading to,
to appropriate?
you know, grants for social and community service is what we came up with. I don't know.
So sorry, is that different than social service? I'm just trying to understand what the categories.
It's different than contracted. So, you know,
Okay.
for Richmond Rescue, we have essentially a contract for them to, I don't know if we have a formal contract. I think we do, actually.
We do, yeah.
And I think we have a formal contract with Howard Mental Health as well.
And then
We
this
do.
would be like
I don't know if
contract.
we have a contract with UVM Home Health Hospice.
I don't believe so.
Did they submit a
But
form?
it acts that like that.
But I mean, if they submitted a form, if it's in our packet, then we don't have a contract.
Yeah. Well, Richmond Rescue submitted a form too.
Oh, interesting. Even though we
Yeah.
signed a contract. Okay, never mind.
Actually, do we have a contract with Richmond Rescue? I don't recall seeing an actual contract.
That's what we did.
Usually towns contract for that.
Well,
Maybe we didn't, maybe we're different.
I don't know.
I mean, it's never been renewed in the last 5 years in my memory.
I don't think we have a contract. I think they are freestanding 501(c)(3). They have a budget. We support. And we support them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it looks
Maybe.
more like.
Maybe not contract, maybe the contract is the wrong word.
We have an agreement.
So many towns around the state do formally contract.
Right, well, yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say Richmond,
Foxborough contracts with us.
I think Richmond Rescue is a donation for a health service.
Hmm.
I would call it more than a social service.
Mhm.
I mean, it's sort of murky, but
Or first responder.
First responder, sure.
Or-
I'm ambivalent, whatever you guys
Yeah.
want.
So am I.
SSTA, that's more like a donation, I think. What did we,
Well, aren't we
Which one?
statutorily mandated to provide transportation for the elderly community?
E&D, elderly and disabled?
So I think that, and that's
Yeah.
the way that we fulfill that obligation.
Isn't it more than 3,000 now?
We only pay a portion, I think.
We pay, and that percentage is
Right,
going up.
right,
We
right.
used to pay a very small amount. 3,000 might actually be under budget because it continues to rise, the portion that we have to pay and the costs. But would that would actually be like a contracted social service, really? Because we are that one, I know there's a contract. I've signed it.
Okay. So contracted social service?
Yeah.
Okay.
Community outreach, we don't contract with Howard Mental Health.
We do
Seems like we
contract with
do.
them.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So that would be also a contracted social service.
but that's up in police, right?
Is that where it is?
Yeah, so that's up in policing, community outreach, so I'll just make a note if we want to maybe move that around. Well, that's gonna be enough, I got that there. Okay, so I think that brings us down to,
I think that's.
For forum, we said admin, right?
Kuzi's was here too, right? Wasn't Kuzi
Well-
in some funny place?
Tuesday is line 216.
Kuzi was under admin, I think, wasn't it?
We haven't designated officially on our checklist, though.
That should, like, Kuzi should probably go to police, I would think.
Right, we just,
And we
yeah.
did that.
Just called police budget.
so then we're down to Vermont Center for Independent Living, probably donated.
Yeah, I'd call that a donation social service, not a health service per se.
And Front Porch Forum, we basically give them $200 a year out of the advertising budget. So
That's already under
it's
admin.
already under admin,
Yeah.
and we've already moved it. It's just sort of a legacy that it sits down here.
Okay, so in admin, remove, just. to be
Yeah.
complete, so.
Okay,
I think that's our donated.
so are we
don't need
completely
help.
eliminating this section?
UVM. We just
That's real
changed
money,
it,
yeah.
donated social, donated health.
OCCC, we've yet to put anything against, and I was calling that well, it's not contracted. It's a social service. It's a donation.
So one of the things that, as we were talking about it, the thing that it feels different to me is some of this stuff is like really important that we expect service from.
Mhm.
The community outreach would be an example of that. Some of these other ones are like, they're just, why not ask? If we ask, we might get.
Right.
So steps against domestic violence,
Yeah.
what do we call that?
What is that?
That's the Better Women's Shelter.
That would seem to be a donation social service, yes?
Yeah.
Richmond Farmers Market now. Sort of in a funky place. What do you call that?
Recreation.
Nutrition.
Yeah,
I mean, at the end of the day, it's a quasi recreational thing. It happens in the park. It's a fun thing for people to do. They provide music. I call it recreation.
I could live with that.
It fits better
Yeah.
than charitable donation.
Yeah. Seems that I could live with that.
And Turning Point Center, obviously, that's addiction treatment. That's similar to the other donated social services.
Yeah.
And then we get down to some that are a little more dubious. They're good causes, but should the town be funding them?
What is Hope Work?
What were they?
I forget, but I used to know.
What they were?
Sexual violence.
Is that what it was?
So social service.
So the possibly, it's not like the Better Women's Shelter, it's actually counseling and support for victims of sexual violence.
And this next one, I frankly, well, two things. I couldn't figure out that it fit anywhere. And secondly, when I looked up both Boy Scouts of America and Green Mountain Council, nowhere did I see that they are funded by government, local, state, or federal. There was a description of how they raise money, which is mostly from families, donations, fundraising activities.
Did you look at their 990?
No.
I'm just gonna take a peek.
Well, for this troop, they probably won't do it for this troop,
Oh, I don't think so, but the BSA as a whole. Or the Green Mountain Council, whatever it's called.
which would be.
So what,
Each council seems to be in here.
but what's funky about this is, if I recall correctly, this was from the troop that was asking for a religious entity to be the recipient of the
The
funds,
Catholic Church.
which seemed to me like a difficult.
Yeah.
That's getting us into deep water.
So I would say probably no to that.
Yeah, I would be happy to donate as an individual, but I don't feel comfortable taking the town voters' taxes and doing it.
I don't feel comfortable with that one. What about Halloween candy?
Recreation. That's not paying for we donated the candy. People like me who had a booth, we donated the candy. That's paying more for, I don't know if they paid the sound guy, but just the expense. They paid for pizza for the volunteers. They had.
We paid for?
No, the Halloween on the green, the Frenches, Rebecca and Andrew, I think took donations from other friends, but they're asking for this to help defray it.
So do we write a check to somebody?
I would assume to Rebecca and Andrew.
The town has never funded it.
Yeah,
before.
this is the first time ask.
This is sort of, they grew up, yeah, I think you said the Frenchies put it together, like they've had donations. This is their first time asked.
Yeah, they've done it for 3 years, but this is their first time asking. I think it's just a Hail Mary, like, well, why not ask? Everybody else does.
So I'm a little torn on this. I think in full disclosure, I was a Cub Scout and then joined an outing club instead of joining the Boy Scouts. There was a fork in the road.
And you took it.
For me personally. My brother was a Boy Scout, enjoyed it. And I'm certainly, I don't want to be in a position of anti-Boy Scouts, but I'm not convinced that it's appropriate for the town taxpayer to be purchasing items for.
I would agree. I was in the Boy Scouts. I was a terrible Boy Scout. I got 2 badges, merit badges ever.
Well, it's a lot relative to many other things that we give money to, and it's actually, it's only a handful of participants.
The other, just to get into the weeds, if I recall correctly, it's the purchase of a trailer. And I'm not even clear who would own or register the trailer, given the.
Interesting. I'm on the BSA the BSA 990 for the Green Mountain Council, and they check, if you know a 990, there's a whole section that says reason for public charity status. And the checkbox they've checked is an organization that normally receives a substantial part of its support from a governmental unit or the general public. So I guess that general public, I don't.
Presumably. So I'm just not sure that it fits.
Yeah.
Is everybody here thinks it does fit?
I don't.
I think you're preaching to the choir on that.
So if we move on from that, if we conclude, we say remove it, it's like regretfully no, perhaps. And then Halloween and the green, how do we feel about subsidizing a Halloween event on the green?
It's a very small ask. And I'm not, I am a huge participant in it. So I'm not.
Well, it provides a safe social gathering for townspeople.
And it's extremely popular with the
A
people.
lot of Vermont towns do subsidize safe Halloween activities.
Have you guys did you ever go down there during it? It's packed. Even on the rainy day, we had tons of kids.
Well, I've gone down to Tilden and Baker Street.
No, this is the afternoon thing on a Saturday.
I get plenty of candy from that.
Okay. What are you addressed as, Yoda?
I haven't done it for about 30 years, but
I can kind of see.
Good, this candy is.
so, you know, the screen that goes through my head is, and not whether all of these are worthy organizations,
Yeah.
you know, there's no doubt. It's whether or not you raise taxpayers' money for.
And the whole Dillonsbury thing, is this something that the state says a town can fund? Is what governmental service is it covering? And I don't see where the Boy Scouts really fit that. They're a great organization. They come to me and ask, I'll donate, but I don't think legally we probably even can.
So that's something, are we gonna find that out? Was there gonna be some legal review? that
He was supposed to give us a list, right?
There
When we
was some
left it
work
with
on
Joe.
it, if I remember correctly, that was this awkward moment where apparently VLCT is not given good guidance in this regard. About charitable donations, social services, contracts, etc. And at least there's one hypothesis that if we're going to, whatever's left in donations to charitable organizations, would require individual voter approval, like a vote on each organization's request. Which is not ludicrous when you think about it, as opposed to, and then what some other towns, there's an awkward history around the state and country where, you know, different select boards and entities have said, oh, here's a deserving cause, and you start putting money into it, and
then it becomes a tradition.
And it's a tradition, and 20 years later, why are we doing this? Because it started somewhere.
Yeah, I would note that, you know, we have a line item in here for Halloween, presumably candy, and we don't have a line item for the food show, for example.
Oh, heavens, that's a good point.
So
as the food shelf, they've asked us in past years, have they not?
Didn't this year.
Yeah.
Another way I think about this is what is the impact of our funding or not funding a request? There are some of these organizations like, as I happen to know, UVM Home Health and Hospice is a pretty sizable organization. But they provide a lot of free or charity care, and they operate some of their programs at a loss, and the only way they survive are donations, both public and private. So that one is easier. Some of the other ones are less easy. We heard from the farmers market that it would be difficult for them to survive without it. And I think there is both a nutritional and social benefit. Halloween, I'm not as clear what we're paying for. It was a social benefit. I'm hard pressed to say there's a nutritional benefit.
Yeah, I don't think we can go there.
It's a recreation item, is how I see it.
Yeah. It's a safe, structured event for kids in the community.
Our community cares, it might fall into that same boat of needing a contribution in order to survive.
Based on my conversation with Suzanne tonight, I would agree.
And I could call that any one of these. Our community cares camp does recreational activity, they do nutrition. So I could fit it into recreation in my head, or I could fit it into
social services.
So
I would be more inclined, just based on what I know of them. I think they certainly do recreation, but I think they're providing a valuable social service.
Yeah.
The kids that are in there are getting it's not just fun. I mean, they get a lot of social benefit out of it.
Yeah, you got two hands up.
Okay, Erin.
Hi. Hey, I just want to say that I did the Halloween Saturday thing 2 years ago, I guess. And to me, it's very similar to the 4th of July event. It's very popular, just mostly with younger families, it seems. But it serves the exact same purpose as the 4th of July thing. So, I mean, to me, it's the same. I would say we support it.
Okay, Connie?
But 4th of July wouldn't happen without our contribution. And would this happen without our contribution?
Well, that's one way of questioning it. The other, though, is when we say Halloween, and if we were going to fund them, is in recreation, not in a charitable donation. Right?
Connie?
I think if you look up under recreation, don't we have $500 for a special event, and couldn't the Halloween candy come out of that?
Well, I don't think that the candy was donated by various people. This is paying more for the expenses of holding the event. This is not going down to Costco and buying a whole bunch of bags of candy.
I don't
Mostly-
think it, but it doesn't clarify that anywhere. It just says special events, and Halloween on the green is a special event.
Just I keep hearing people say we're paying for candy. We're probably not actually paying for candy. We're paying for other stuff. If we pay for it at all.
Right.
So that's
But,
why the $500 could, that's where that
Yes,
could be. If
I don't dispute that.
I don't know what else be interesting to know, what did we spend $488 on an FY 22 for a special event? I don't recall.
That would not have been, we did the employee appreciation this year.
Yeah, that would have come out of employee
Okay.
appreciation. Do we have a line for that? We're gonna overspend that this year a little bit, but anyway, so we've got some things we can move around here and come back and mull on and just see if we get further advice.
So I think this perhaps works, and it basically takes some things and puts them somewhere else. Lake Iroquois Association, I'm a little on the fence. Is that a conservation fund request, or if that's every year? Maybe it is like recreation,
Well, it's paying for milfoil abatement pretty much.
and that helps with swimming and fishing and canoeing and boating. And so I would observe that might be recreation. And in our winnowing task here, then what we'd be left with is the donation of social service entities or health service entities is a smaller set.
I've heard no oil fed fish get pretty big.
They're 3-4 feet.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they always jump back in the water, so we can't really measure it.
Well, considering my son is 10 feet tall, that gives you a sense of how big that fish really was. I mean, it was huge.
Well, it wasn't, it's bigger than any fish I've ever caught. Since I've never gone fishing.
According to your notes, we only have one thing left that's in stay, and it's in this.
Oh, I probably just didn't update it. That was COTS. Did somebody say social service for that?
I
Probably,
gotta see
right?
what else it would be.
Yeah, sorry. So I did,
Okay.
stay was an earlier note from an hour and a half ago.
So what I would suggest, it's getting late, you
It
know,
is.
perhaps, we actually cleaned up a lot.
Yeah.
And we did a lot. This might be one that we revisit in December, and along with the police. I think the police was an outstanding one. But I don't think we have any other outstanding sections, do we?
Not too much.
I don't think so.
We had revenue, general budget discussion, and we already did the fireworks. And the revenue and bill should be able to, go ahead.
I'm sorry, we should come back to this after we get some.
Yeah,
perhaps
legal advice
greater
anyways,
Legal
yeah.
advice or more detailed legal
Yeah.
advice.
Connie has her hand up.
Honey,
I think the main thing that we all need to keep in mind as we're moving and adding and possibly removing is what that tax rate increase is on the revenue side, because we're down to December and we have to have this buttoned up in the beginning of January because we got to get it to Linda. So we essentially have one meeting, and right now that tax rate is at what?
Higher than we want.
11.33%.
no, that's,
So Jay, I think Connie raises a good point. It's possible we may need to contemplate, I'm sorry to say this, another meeting.
I
'cause
think so.
To get from 11.33, remind me, what was our?
well, don't we usually do a third one of these in December? We normally do a third meeting in December, so, yeah.
Yeah, we got a third, but you were talking about four.
It's possible we
Oh,
need a
fourth.
fourth. I think we should just have that in our radar. To Connie's point, we can't be messing around like late January,
No.
right?
Yeah, it would have to be late December, early January, because I think. Yeah, we need to have it finalized by like the third week in January at the latest.
Well, recognizing that we have holidays, is it possible to think we need another fill-in Monday meeting just in case?
Yes.
And we can cancel it if we don't need it?
Yes.
Second Monday in January.
that what it would be?
Well, let's see. Also, we would have
There may be an opening. Is it,
Fifth Monday or
there's not a fifth in December. I mean, we could do like Tuesday, the 19th of December, which would be the day after the second meeting in December. Right? Like if you look at a
I
calendar.
hate to see it going any later than that. The 19th would work for me.
You know, that would give us the 11th to sort of see, okay, where are we at? What do we need to do? And then we could come back. That'll give us a few days to make adjustments and come back on the 19th.
And the next day I go off on my concert tour of Bolivia. So 19th is about as late as I want to put it.
Okay.
Bolivia.
Mhm.
What is
They love people who totally can't sing in Bolivia.
Off-key Christmas carols.
That's right.
I've heard of that tour. That's very popular.
It's on my bucket list.
Lisa,
the budget meeting's the 18th, right?
The budget, no, so
You're
the
muted.
budget meeting is the 11th.
Lisa.
You know, along with figuring out when we're gonna meet is what kind of a number are we looking for to lower our percentage increase? You know, if we.
I'd like
if
to
we look
keep
at-
it no higher than 5 if we can manage it, and lower yet if we can get there.
Okay, so we're, what kind of money does that wind up being? Is it like 40,000 per percent or something? So we're looking at about
How much
Let's see,
is it?
that's 11. So if we
200,000 reduction?
added this to 240. Oops,
That's the way you do it, yeah.
100,000 would drop this from 11 to 8-ish. So every 100,000 comes down 3% roughly.
So we're looking at maybe 250,000 or somewhere between 0 and 250,000.
So I think it's 140 on that sign.
We haven't applied that 140.
No, that was with the 140. Yeah. So because we had 500,000 here. So I dropped that to 140, and that's when we went up to this 1,100 or 11%.
Oh, I got you.
So,
I got you.
So
Well, what the police model we come back with.
That
Yeah.
would be a good one, yeah.
I think another thing that we just to keep in our minds, you know, we did have, what was it 500,000 offset last year?
Yeah.
So at some point, that's going to catch up with us.
Mhm.
Like we can't
We
hold
can't do
it
that every year.
at 2 or 3% every year and like have a $500,000 go away that we used to offset. So like there's going to be a time, and maybe this is part of that time.
So in that regard, Jay, it strikes me if we're like trying to move from 11 towards 5, even if we don't quite hit it, but with our level best to be trying to hit that target. And if we can't reach it, we could contemplate either you got to use more reserves or you got to reduce planned expenses, right?
Or you could use, I mean, you could use a few more unassigned funds and say, we're going to go, you know, we'll go a little lower than 15 potentially, but maybe that's worth it.
Can we use some reserves for expected expenses that would fall under that category? I'm not sure which, but.
Yeah, I mean, we've really gone through the capital plan and everything kind of, I mean, we can look at that, but my first thought is in the last couple of years, we've really tried to give each thing a purpose with the plan. But maybe there's something else we could find. I don't know.
And I would observe, I think Connie and the department heads have spent a lot of time working on the capital plan and thinking about what are the expenses going to be? What do we put into reserves? So has been pretty planful.
The
you know,
only place we could go, the big hit on the reserves is the fire trucks. Because they're $750,000 to $1 million purchases.
with the money.
So
What
it's
if we left-
definitely a struggle doing that without a loan.
Yeah, are you going like we could do it? We could basically reduce that line, then the line that contributes to reserves and get a loan instead, right?
We could, but they're all gonna bump into each other. I mean, because the problem we're having right now with the next truck we're getting, we did a 20-year loan on that truck and we're still paying on the loan and we're having to buy a new truck. We got 2 years on the loan and we're paying for the chassis on the new truck to replace it. So that
Sure.
is the risk we run with fire trucks. It's really because I think they have like what, a 15, no, not even a 15-year shelf life, but
Oh.
that definitely has been the most difficult part in the capital plan for me to try to keep our reserve contributions under control.
Yep.
Okay. Well, stuff to mull and research.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that people feel essential that we discussed tonight? Okay.
Productive meeting. This is good.
Lisa usually likes to make the motion to adjourn. Lisa, do you want to make a motion to adjourn?
I sure do. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Lisa Miller, seconded by David Sander to adjourn. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa,
Jeff.
aye? No, sorry, Jim.
Art, I.
And Jay, aye. We are adjourned.